Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. And with me now, got a few guests. We got Raymond Ibrahim and we got Jai and DOC. Jai and DOC are with me pretty frequently. Raymond has been with me. I think we did one live stream together. Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
One.
So did a live stream. I think that was last year with Raymond Ibrahim, but he is your friendly neighborhood historian. But why don't you go ahead and tell everyone about yourself in case they're not familiar with you?
Sure, yeah. I'm kind of like a dinosaur guy that's been around for a long time, but back before YouTube when people read and wrote, and that was the main medium. So that's what I've been doing for almost 20 years. My first article for the LA Times came out in 2005. I was just reminded. So 20 years, and it was about Islam. But basically, long story short, I've studied it in the academic setting. I have a master's degree in history dealing with Islam and the interaction between Islam and Christendom. And I worked at the Library of Congress, went to Georgetown University, Catholic University, again, took many classes about Islam, know the languages. That's what and then I worked at the Library of Congress where I actually dealt with all these languages. The hadith we're going to talk about, the first time I saw it was at the Library of Congress, where an Arab speaker that I knew, when he knew I was getting into this field of Islam, and my first book came out in 2007, so I was at the Library of Congress about Al Qaeda, and he was like, "Hey, come here, let me show you something." And I distinctly remember him pulling out Musnad bin Hanbal, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and saying, "Hey, read this." And I read it, and it's what we're going to talk about. And I just remember thinking, like, "Are you serious?" And I thought to myself, "Yeah, this is a joke." But, well, it wasn't. Anyway, that's a little side note there. And other than that, I've been also writing a lot of books. All I've been doing has been writing in the last almost 20 years, books, and some are pretty well received. The last two, Sword and Scimitar, Defenders of the West, which deal with the history of Christianity and Islam. And now I finally realized that everyone wants to watch videos, which is kind of cool because it's pretty easy too, because I already have the knowledge. So now I'm trying to do this sort of thing. And, kudos to you, David, for actually, being the trailblazer of this sort of thing, videos. And so, yeah, I'm trying to bring this message to all the millennials and the Gen Z types who don't have time to read.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good approach. So you spent years doing all your research, compiling all the information, and now sharing it on YouTube. So everyone who's watching, the link to Raymond's YouTube channel's in the description, as well as to his recent video on this topic. Now, I've heard about this for a long time, mostly from Arabic-speaking Christians who tell me, "Hey, you need to check this out." Or, David, what are your thoughts on? They'll either say these men, or they'll say the jinn riding Muhammad all night long, and so on. And for me, it's always everything is about timing. Everything is about timing. Like, something will happen and I just won't be interested in it. And all of a sudden something will happen. I'm like, all right, now's the right time. Now's the right time to go with this. And seeing your video is like, you know what? This is a good time for this. This is a really good time for to popularize this story among English speakers, because the Arab speaking Christians know about this story. Jai and DOC.
Hey, what's up?
How you guys doing?
We are doing good. We both saw your video and Raymond's video, and yeah, we were familiar with the source as well, but we were really excited to see how you guys did it. So yeah, we're happy to be with you guys on the stream today, and
I'm just here for the jokes.
Yeah, we're here for the jokes, really. Yeah.
Hey, this is no laughing matter.
Yeah.
A man got taken in the desert. And they did horrible, unspeakable things. You can't even say these things without using some sort of code language or turning it into a story about jinn and so on. So this is no laughing matter. We will not under any circumstances be making horrible jokes about Muhammad getting banged in the desert by a bunch of
Now you've crossed the line, which bin Mas'ud never crossed, and we'll talk about the line.
I crossed the Diddy line, man. I crossed the Diddy line. Shame on me. Shame on me. So first,
David, are you saying that there is a moon splitting in Islam?
Yeah, we now know what it referred to. The story actually comes from Ibn Masud, and the original story was Muhammad took me out in the desert, and I saw the splitting of the moon. And then later versions of the story, they change the story. They do this regularly. They modify the story over time. But yeah, that was the original splitting of the moon. It involved Muhammad in the desert with the men of Al-Zut, and then got changed later on. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and watch Raymond's video, because he's already discussed a lot of stuff, and then he'll have some stuff to add. We'll get Giant DOC's thoughts on this, and then I'll eventually share my thoughts on all of this, because this is kind of connected to a lot of other issues. Some of these early super chats are about Raymond Ibrahim. Let's go through a couple here, and then we'll get started. Just want to get down to the one about Raymond's books here. This info should be spread to prisons, especially in Europe, which are filled with many Muslims. I imagine this wouldn't go down well there. Aisha too. I don't actually know about European prisons. I do know about U.S. prisons, and I've been saying for years, if you get United States prison inmates to understand Muhammad's relationship with Aisha, that it actually happened, the spread of Islam in prison is done. That's one of the main two rules. Don't mess with kids, anything having to do with kids, and don't snitch. And so those are like the bottom of the barrel, snitches and someone who's done something with kids. And so if they find out Muhammad did that, that will not be a viable option.
The allusion to the European prisons, I think, may have to do with the fact that, especially in England, the prisons there are actually like Dawah centers.
Yep.
way worse than in America.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, those are Dawah factories, and building a future army factories there.
Yeah.
Muslim told me that Aisha's age of 6 is incorrect because mass transmission is needed as well as isnad. Is Imam Bukhari daif in some compilation? What are you even talking? You need to, whoever you're talking to is spreading complete nonsense. There are hundreds, I think a little over 200 hadiths about Aisha's age. And so if you're talking about mass transmission, I'm not aware of many hadiths that are more mass transmitted than that. It's all over the place. It's all over Bukhari. It's all over Sahih Muslim. It's all over Sunan Abu Dawud. It's all over all of them. It's in the Sirah. It's in Tabarani. So it's in all those places. So that is definitely mass transmitted. And you have multiple Sahih isnads. And there are a couple hadiths that have been challenged later, but kind of the definition of Bukhari is that it contained only the best of the best. So, yeah. After missing like 5 streams total, glad to catch the best possible topic. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And, here we go. This is what I want to get to. Giovanni says, Raymond, loved your books. Great work.
Thank you.
All right. So we got several more super chats, ladies and gentlemen, but let's go ahead and watch this video. I'm fine playing it all the way through, but if you want to pause and jump in at any point or talk about something, just let me know and I can pause it.
Go ahead, play through, and then if I have any additions, I'll do it later.
All right. So let's go ahead and watch the video here at the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pretty short video, very shareable. The link is in the description box. You should be sharing this stuff everywhere, and let's go.
Okay, I recently watched a hilarious debate on an Arabic religious program that once again reminded me of the importance of the hadith. So let's have a quick discussion about it. Cherished by Muslims for containing the instructive and edifying words and deeds of their beloved Prophet Muhammad, the hadith also serves as one of the most potent weapons, one of the most potent polemics against Islam. It is, in fact, a double-edged sword, so let's look into it. Before unpacking this strange irony, however, a little relevant background. In an earlier video, I said that although those Western people who insist that Muhammad never existed dismiss the hadith as forgeries, the hadith actually do lend credence to the existence of an Arabian prophet, though indirectly. Why did I say this? Because if they were later forgeries meant to create a sacred foundational story for Islam centering around a noble and righteous prophet, why do so many of them present Muhammad in a very unflattering light, as does the hadith we will soon be examining? The most
did want to pause very quickly on that, because that's a similar argument to what I use. I've debated Robert Spencer and Jay Smith on the existence of Muhammad. Robert Spencer and Jay Smith both believe that Muhammad didn't exist, or if he did exist, he's so completely unrecognizable historically that he bears almost no connection with the Muhammad we read about in the sources. But you're looking at this in a similar way to what I argued in debating them. I have to acknowledge we've got a problem that we're lacking very early material and so on, so we have to rely on basically historical principles to try and discover reliable information. But that's very similar to what I've been arguing is that if you could invent anyone, if you could make up anything you wanted, you could make up the guy who's absolutely perfect for whatever you're trying to accomplish. But the Muslim sources are filled with material that I can't imagine making up for any relevant purpose, like the stories of the satanic verses, Muhammad delivering revelations from the devil, Muhammad being a victim of black magic, Muhammad being covered in semen and so on, and Aisha having to come up with 27 different ways of trying to clean it off him and so on. But then this story as well. So you are a fan of applying the principle of embarrassment that basically this works in law courts too. If someone admits something in court while testifying that would be embarrassing, that would actually hurt his case, people look at that and say, I trust this person more for sharing this because it actually could hurt him. But historians look at things and it's basically, three categories. It's it helps you, it hurts you, or it's neutral. And when a Muslim's examining the history of Muhammad, embarrassing material, to say, oh, this couldn't have been true. This must have been made up because it's so embarrassing, like the satanic verses. Right. But historians look at that and they go, oh, this is embarrassing. So it doesn't seem like something someone would have made up. And if someone did make it up, it doesn't look like something that Muslims would have just shared and spread around like crazy. And so the best explanation for why we have this really embarrassing material is that it happened, and early on they knew it happened, and they were just recording it. So you're a
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And and that is my position. And I would amplify it a little bit more by saying, first of all, having really listened to a lot of the people who argue against the hadith, I got to tell you that they go way overboard. Okay. For starters, it's become almost axiomatic listening to some people that the hadith, aren't compiled until 250 or 300 years after Muhammad. I mean, I hear a lot of people say that. Actually, the earliest hadith is about 130 years after Muhammad's death, and that's the Muwatta by Malik. Okay, and he used to be one of the earliest jurists. Okay, so we have about 130 years after Muhammad's death, we have the hadith. Okay, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that a lot of people think when they hear these crazy warped hadiths, such as the one we're going to discuss, that, oh yeah, all these crazy people are running around saying whatever they want for whatever agenda they have. And it's not like that, okay? These hadith compilers that we're talking about, the 6 canonical ones, and as well as the one we're going to talk about, which is Ahmed bin Hanbal, who's actually, he's known as the unofficial 7th Sahih. And in fact, the hadith we're going to talk about is considered Sahih. We'll get into that. But anyway, these guys were fanatical Muslims who loved Muhammad. Bin Hanbal, the guy we're talking about, who recorded the hadith in question, refused to eat a watermelon because he could not find a hadith of Muhammad eating a watermelon. So my point is, these were very pious, Muslims who were also very simple men. In other words, they all they cared about is transmitting the correct hadith, and if it looked weird or warped or perverted, they didn't care. Their job was to just record it. And I believe that's why you have all these weird hadith, as you were indicating. And like you said, why would people make this up? But like I said, a lot of people just don't even understand the nature of the hadith. They think it's just like running around and anyone can say anything and anyone can believe anything. It's not like that. It's actually pretty rigorous. And also, let's keep in mind, the whole logic of the hadith. The reason it's written so much later, whether it's 130 years, 130 years and on 200, 250 years, etc., is because the Arabs were an illiterate people. We know that. But illiterate people maintain oral traditions. We've seen that in the Americas, okay, the Native Americans. And, when people maintain, illiterate people have really remarkable memories. Okay, let's think about ourselves before we got iPhones where everything's recorded. I remember as a kid, I still remember my phone number when I was 9 years old. I remember my address. I remember everything. Today, I don't remember my phone number. I actually have to look it up, to be honest with you. All right. So my point is, when you're an illiterate people, the oral testimony is so important, and people have such a sharp memory that it's really it's not what we think, oh yeah, whatever. So my point is, I'm not trying to say that the hadith is authentic. I'm just trying to say that that very argument itself that everyone has just jumped on board with and kind of like poo-pooed the hadith, oh yeah, we can ignore it. I don't do that. I really think the hadith, there's definitely some kernels of truth in it, especially with what we're talking about, this sort of embarrassing stuff, for the reasons that I just described. These guys were serious, pious devotees of Muhammad, and they didn't have the critical thinking capacity to say, oh, this makes them look bad. All they wanted to do is the isnad correct. The isnad is the chain of narration. Is this person authentic or not in regards to narration? That's it. And they put it in. And that's why when you look at it, it's so full of very unflattering things like what we're going to talk about. So that's just like my little preamble about the hadith, which amongst the Muhammad doesn't exist people is not even worth talking about. It has to be just like ignored completely. And even scholars, actual real scholars, take the hadith seriously, sort of like I'm saying, including Patricia Crone, the one who actually who really started this Muhammad didn't exist movement until about 2008, when she wrote an article where she said she emphatically believes Muhammad existed. So anyway, a little preface there for you.
Mm-hmm. So in your face, Robert Spencer and Jay Smith, you heard it here. I just wanted to verify for all you young people who cannot conceive of a situation where you would have to memorize lots of numbers. Back when Raymond and I were kids, you didn't just remember your own phone number. You had all your family members' phone numbers memorized, all your friends. You knew like 20 or 30 or 40 phone numbers back then, and it was just totally normal. You had to dial up on the phone all your friends and so on. So what that means is there are you use your brain in certain ways, and your brain gets used to it, and your brain adapts well. And so oral cultures would be significantly better at sharing information, passing on information than we are. And so this story, ladies and gentlemen, can't just toss it aside. But back to the video. Oh, wait, hang on. Got two rude comments here real quick. K. Cuman now always on time. They're referring to AP, who's historically always late, but as soon as he became a Christian, he's always on time. And they're using this to attack Protestants everywhere, saying, Protestant, now always late, draw your own conclusion. Very, very rude, very rude. And then this one, too. All these years, AP got blamed for being late, but turns out it was Delay Wood with the daily wait all this time. Now they're calling me Delay Wood. Extremely, extremely rude. I'll probably ban these guys later. Anyway, back to this video.
Common rebuttal to this observation, appearing in the comments section of that video, see, I do read them, went as follows.
Sir, you need to understand, things that seem strange to us moderns were normal among the Arabs of the time.
No, I do understand that. Really, I do. And even in that previous video, had given as an example the notorious Rida al-Kibir hadith, whereby Muhammad told a woman to breastfeed a man. That is, to thrust her breast in a grown man's mouth as a way of making him her son.
Brother, what's that?
Considering the conservative, patriarchic, and hyper-tribalism of 7th century Arabia, trust me when I say that Muhammad was introducing a radical and shocking idea, even then. Which brings me to my point. How the Arabic program I recently watched validated these 2 points. First, that the bizarre and unflattering accounts of Muhammad contained in the hadith contradict the idea that the hadith is a later forgery meant to give Islam a noble foundational story revolving around a pious and upright prophet. And, much more importantly, second, that the hadith, because it does capture the essence of Muhammad, remains the chief weapon against Islam. Now, the debate I watched centered around a hadith that, though long hidden, first started reaching the general populace of the Arabic-speaking world via satellite programs, I'd say around 2015-ish or so. I first wrote an article about it in 2022, link in description. This odd hadith, which I'm about to narrate, appears in several hadith collections, including the highly esteemed Musnad of Ibn Hanbal, founder of one of Islam's 4 schools of laws, or madhahib, as well as in many other well-respected Islamic texts, all of which are being taught in Al-Azhar, and all of which I have listed, volume and page numbers, in the description of this video. The hadith, which is narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud, a companion of the Prophet, and one of Islam's most reliable and trustworthy transmitters of a hadith, goes as follows. Brace yourself. Abdullah begins by telling us that Muhammad called on him to accompany him on a trip into the desert. When they reached a certain place and night had fallen, Muhammad made a line in the sand, most likely a circle, and told Abdullah, quote, "Stay behind this line and do not cross it, for if you do, you will die." Muhammad then left his startled companion and walked into the desert night, about the distance of a hurled stone, says Abdullah. Before long, our narrator saw a group of men, he does not specify how many, who, quote, appeared to be al-Zut. He describes them as, quote, tall, lean, and naked. Other Islamic sources say these Zut were a black-skinned people, and we'll get into that later. After describing them, Abdullah goes on, and here's the problematic part, to say, quote, "They went to and began to ride the Prophet of Allah." Literally, that's what the Arabic says. These tall, black, naked men rode Muhammad. The Arabic word yarkabun, which I will presently discuss, can also be translated as mounted. And they did this all night long, says Abdullah. During which time they would also come and circle around and try to reach him, but they were prevented, apparently from the line of protection Muhammad had drawn in the sand for his companion. Abdullah concludes his narration, quote, "I was extremely terrified by them, so I sat down. With the coming of dawn, they began to depart. Then the Prophet of Allah returned, slowly and in pain, from that which they did while riding him." According to another narration found in several Islamic texts,
Did want to point out someone made an interesting observation in the comments when I was asking whether people thought this was consensual or non-consensual. They pointed out that it seems consensual and that it's understood like anyone behind this line is off limits for the festivities. Always a possible interpretation.
including well, no, Mecca. It's very clear that it was a pre-planned rendezvous, because he came and told him, "Hey, stay there. I'm going to go do something over there, and I'll be back."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And all the guys, just so you know, all the guys who are coming, they all understand that's the line where you get to watch. But
right. By Al-Fakahi, Muhammad complained to Abdullah that, quote, "They wounded me all night long," at which point the Prophet proceeds to lay his head and fall asleep in Abdullah's lap. Needless to say, the highly unflattering implications of this hadith are clear. But it becomes even more scandalous once one brings in what several other Islamic reference books and histories say. For starters, who are these al-Zut, these naked men who rode Muhammad all night long? According to Islam's written records, they were a migrant people from India or modern-day Pakistan, described in the sources as very tall, very dark-skinned, very lean, strong and hardy, and often used for labor-intensive work. In early Arabic ethnographies and literary works, al-Zut are also depicted as being very sexual and virile, with very large penises. In fact, according to one Arabic source, Al-Tashibbahat by Ibn Abi Awan, quote, "The penis of al-Zut never weakens," meaning their large phalluses never go limp and are ever ready.
I have to point out, I have received lots of comments from Indians and Pakistanis cheering for this.
So have I.
Yeah, they're right about us. I've seen it. So anyway.
I'm sorry for the crude language, but this is what the Islamic texts say, verbatim. Now let's talk about the Arabic word translated as ride, as in al-Zut, rode the Prophet. Not only does it have the same exact meaning in English, as in to ride a horse, for example, but it carries the same slang meaning, as in copulating with a woman. In fact, several Islamic sources use it literally to mean sex. For example, while commenting on the famous hadith, also in Musnad ibn Hanbal, where Muhammad says, quote, "Women, dogs, and donkeys cancel a man's prayer," Al-Qurtubi, one of Islam's most celebrated commentators of the Quran, elaborates by saying, quote, "A woman may be compared to a cow, horse, or camel, for all are ridden."
I have to point out, you could say a woman may be compared to a horse, a cow, a camel, or Muhammad, and that all are ridden. Just wanted to.
Oh yeah, now
he could have added that. He could have added that.
Yeah. It's also interesting to note that when al-Zut begins circling and trying to reach our terrified narrator, Abdullah, his first instinct was to sit down. Was he trying to hide and protect that one part of his body, which these naked men were apparently trying to access? That is, his bottom, by sitting down? Again, as I think you can see, this hadith is scandalous. Not the sort of thing you'd expect people who want to fabricate an honorable prophet would make up. Nor, I can assure you, was such a deed, done hidden in the desert night, deemed normal or acceptable among the Arabs of Muhammad's time. Now, during the debates I've watched over this hadith, others, including many former Muslims, regularly make even more troubling connections. For example, they cite the well-known hadith where Muhammad is asked, quote, "Will the people of paradise have sex?" And his answer, quote, "Yes, with a vagina that never tires and a penis that never weakens." The phrase "a penis that never weakens" is identical to the aforementioned description of al-Zut's genitalia, suggesting, as many former Muslims are quick to point out, that Muhammad so enjoyed his night with these naked black men that he went on to secretly enshrine its most notable aspect, powerful penises that never weaken or slacken, as a characterization of paradise, and possibly as an inside joke with himself. To sum up, based on numerous Islamic texts, especially Musnad ibn Hanbal and al-Qurtubi's tafsir, and several other historical and ethnographical texts, again, see this video's description for references, how this hadith is understood, especially by ex-Muslims who cite it as cause for their apostasy, is as follows. And before I proceed, please note that the following summary is not based on my thoughts or words, but rather the words of first, as we saw, well-respected Muslim texts, and second, those who use this hadith as a polemic against Islam. I'm trying to give you an idea of what is being said and how this hadith is being presented in these debates that often flare out between Muslims. All right, here we go. Muhammad took his close companion, Abdullah, into the desert at night. He warned him to wait behind a line and went off at a distance, apparently for a pre-planned rendezvous. Before long, Abdullah saw several naked men from the people of al-Zut appear, described in the sources as tall, lean, virile, and with large penises. These men then took turns riding or mounting the Prophet all night long. They also tried to reach him, but Abdullah immediately sat down, apparently to protect that one part of his body they were trying to access. As the sun rose, these naked men began to depart, even as Muhammad returned in pain, limping towards Abdullah and saying how al-Zut had injured him. He then lays in his companion's lap and falls asleep. Finally, as a reflection of what Muhammad thought of that night, he went on to enshrine it as an aspect of paradise where the, quote, "penis never weakens," end quote. Okay, that's what's being said and what loud shouting matches take place over. I've personally watched several satellite Arabic language shows where Muslims call in and ask an expert sheikh about this hadith. Typical responses are that 1. Al-Zut were not humans, but rather jinn. 2. This occurred during Muhammad's famous meeting with the jinn, known in Islamic tradition as the Night of the Jinn, when the Prophet recited the Quran to them. And 3, it's known that Abdullah bin Mas'ud was not present with Muhammad during the Night of the Jinn, so therefore this hadith must be weak and likely fabricated. Such are the responses against this hadith. As we have seen, however, and as those who use this hadith as a polemic against Islam point out, the earliest references to al-Zut all depict them as humans. And dismissing the hadith as weak on the claim that Abdullah was not present for the Night of the Jinn is itself very weak, since the night in question had nothing to do with the jinn, meaning there is no reason to doubt the words of Abdullah, a chief and highly trusted transmitter of hadith. By the way, I decided to ask ChatGPT what it thought were innocent and non-loaded questions, and as might be expected, it answered me honestly enough. First, I asked it whether al-Zut were humans or jinn, to which it responded, quote, "In Muslim historical sources, the Zut were consistently described as humans, not jinn. They were portrayed as a real ethnic group, most often associated with India or Sindh, modern-day Pakistan, and as a migrant labor or military class. They are also described as a rebellious and militarily capable people." I then asked ChatGPT to give me a physical description of al-Zut based on early Arabic sources, and it said, quote, "In literary and anecdotal texts, they are grouped together with other southern or dark-skinned people, all of whom have the following traits: sexual potency, prominent genitalia, and associations with physical strength and virility." Anyway, so there you have it. Here is a perfect example of why the hadith should not be so quickly dismissed as later forgeries meant to present an honorable prophet, and here is a perfect example of how the hadith is being used as a powerful weapon against Islam.
All right, that was one of the most Islamophobic things I've ever seen in my entire life. Very, very rude. 1 second before we jump into some additional thoughts, I did want to get down to this follow-up about someone keeps asking about Aisha based on old stuff. But let's see, got a couple here. My keyboard went out last night. I meant to say L.A. Marzulli got asked 13 questions of the new Mahdi. Both parts of his interview video are out. I wasn't terribly interested in the whole new Mahdi thing, but I might post a response. D, his favorite song, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, or Save a camel, ride a false prophet would probably be better. Mo was the first Pakistani grooming gang victim. Yeah, he very well may be. And here we go. Sup, guys, how are you? One question. Is there any weight to the claims of Ibn Kathir of Asma's age in relation to Aisha making her 16 to 18? Was arguing with a Muslim on X and he brought it up? No, zero weight at all, period. You do have guys who try to avoid specific claims, and they'll do this by... The Muslim sources can be very inconsistent on details about ages and so on. So they'll go over here and they'll say this person was this old when this happened, and from this other source this person was this old and this person saw this at this date, and they'll try to compile them all into some timeline, and then they'll give you they'll add it all up and they'll say, see, this is what the source is really claiming, when literally every source they're quoting says that Aisha was 9. And so think about how sloppy that is. So yeah, general principle: whenever someone like this is saying anything about any source, say, first of all, put it on the screen. I want to see it. I want a screenshot of it. Send me the link to that actual source, because a lot of the claims they're making when they're trying to tie these things together, they're just making up. I've learned this from experience, and I'll just tell you now two things. One, I'll quote what Ibn Kathir says about this issue specifically. And two, I'll tell you, go watch my debate with Kenny Bomer on this, a Muslim convert to Islam. We had 2 entire debates about what the Muslim sources say, and he got crushed both times. Why? Because all the evidence is on my side. But here's what Ibn Kathir says. He quotes Urwa bin al-Zubair, Aisha's nephew, who says that Aisha was 9 years old when Muhammad consummated his marriage with her. Then, after quoting Urwa, Aisha's nephew, on the age of Aisha, Ibn Kathir says this. Urwa's statement, he contracted marriage with Aisha when she was 6, thereafter consummating marriage with her when she was 9, is not disputed by anyone and is well established in the Sahih collections of traditions and elsewhere. So think about this. Your Muslim friend is quoting Ibn Kathir to try and piece together an older age for Aisha. What does Ibn Kathir say? He says, saying that she was 6 and then he consummated with her when she was 9 is not disputed by anyone. He's talking about the Muslim scholars. He's saying no one disputes the age of Aisha when the marriage was consummated. No one. So share that with your friend and tell him.
I'm amazed that people are even saying this, because this is one of the most ironclad, well-accepted issue, her age. But like you said, people are now just, one of their strategies is to create a complete lie. And then other people cite the lie, and then it builds up, snowballs, and it's as if they have evidence. There's really nothing there. It's all garbage.
Yeah, and this approach was more common like 10 and 15 years ago. We've destroyed it so much that now pretty much all the Dawa guys admit that she was 9 years old when the marriage was consummated, and most Muslims acknowledge that now. So yeah, whoever your Muslim friend is, he's using arguments from like 10 or 15 years ago that have already been destroyed. And one follow-up here for Raymond. Read the Sword and the Scimitar. Fantastic book. My favorite chapter was the Siege of Vienna and the Poles coming to the rescue. They're totally based.
Nice.
Yes.
Thanks.
Very, very nice. They're very nice. All right.
I have an idea of what the word based mean, but I'm kind of an old fogey. You want to break it down for me? I mean, I know it's positive.
Yeah, I had to find that. Matter of fact, I had the same reaction as you. As one time, like I'll have to ask my kids. I'll be like, "This guy just called me a Chad. What? How do I react?" They'll go, "No, it's good," and I'll have to find out.
Yeah.
So I had to find out that Chad.
I was called a Giga Chad, and I was like, "Wow, that
Yeah.
even has like a technical aspect to it."
Yeah, but the same thing with based. I was like, "This guy just called me based. What's that mean?" And they're like, "No, that's good." But yeah, based is like
Okay, good.
You're firm and solid and not easily shaken by.
Okay.
But, yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Thank you.
They were saying about the pole. They were saying about the poles. Poles being totally based.
Right. They were based. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Raymond. Now, before we were talking, you were saying you had some additional follow-up thoughts on on the issue.
On the night in question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've looked at. I've already been. So, like I said, this has been known amongst Muslims and especially Christian apologists of Arabic background for a long, long time. And every time it comes out, and it's funny because I look at comments and a lot of people are like, I can't find this. I can't find this. Well, yeah,
That's what I've seen over and over.
You think you're going to find it? Of course you're not going to find it because it keeps getting, suppressed and deleted. I know it's still out there and you can find it if you look in the right places, but this isn't something that they're trying to advertise or talk about. So it is hard to find online, but I did see it with my own eyes in books, and I know it's out there, and you can find it in correct Ahmed bin Hanbal's, there's PDFs in English and Arabic, which I've accessed, and I know you have too. So it's a real thing. It's there. And it's interesting just to look at all the different sort of, apologias that Muslims try to offer to kind of, sideline the issue. And what's interesting is how they contradict each other, because I've watched a lot of different Muslims, attack this particular hadith, try to correct the meaning, tell you it's not what we think it means. And they contradict each other. And so, okay, I'll give you some examples of what's being said. All right. So first of all, it's mainstream amongst Muslims that what's being described here are jinn. Okay, these are jinn. These are not humans. Even though in the hadith it says, in the Arabic it says, and that's how I translated it, ka al-zut. In other words, people who appeared to be al-zut. He doesn't say they were al-zut, but they it seems like they're the al-zut. All right, so now who are al-zut? And when you look into the ethnographic and literary evidence from that time, the zut, and apparently you can even trace etymologically, the name goes back to peoples in India or in modern day Pakistan who are, I think today they're called the Jat.
Jat, yeah. I've gotten tons of those comments from people saying, hey, these are the Jat. Or some people are saying, yep, these are the Jat. And yet that's and then other people saying, hey, that's my group. Yes, we are like that.
Yeah, I know. They're very proud of it. Okay.
They're proud of that.
Yeah, they're very proud of it. But what really got me is, this whole chat GBT thing. I've been entertaining myself with it. I don't take it too seriously, but I like to play games with it. And it's amusing. So I actually play head games with it, by which I mean, if I asked it, and I did, so I used different IPs, different browsers, etc., and I asked two sets of questions. And the first was, there's a hadith about these people who are called Zut, and apparently they ride the Prophet. Are they jinn or humans? And he immediately told me, no, these are jinn. This has nothing to do with humans. And it also tried to correct me. No, it's not riding, etc., etc. And then on another day, like I said, through a whole different IP and everything, I just randomly asked him, and I said, I didn't mention the hadith. I just said, are the Zut jinn or humans? And immediately it said, and I can send you, I actually took screenshots. I can send them to you. But it immediately said, no, the Zut are humans. And basically from Pakistan or whatever. And then I also, I quoted various Islamic texts that I had read. And I wanted to see if ChatGPT knows about that, where they talk about their large and prominent genitalia. So in the Arabic sources, the Arabic literary sources, when you read about al-Zut, all right, they are akin to al-Zenj. And al-Zenj are the black people of Africa. But al-Zut apparently are Asiatic, Hindus. They're dark-skinned, but they're not Africans, okay? But they get grouped together in the ethnographies of the Arab peoples. And their prominent characteristics is they're sort of strong, athletic, tall, lean, and they all dwell on their large genitalia. And that they're used also for sort of, virile purposes. And they're very, you get this if you've read the Arabian Nights or the 1001 Arabian Nights. This is how dark-skinned peoples are always portrayed. So whether it's a trope or reality, whatever, that's how it's understood, okay? And when I asked ChatGPT, and I didn't mention the hadith, it said, yes, they're humans. And then I asked it, can you describe them to me? And that's exactly what it said, as you saw in the video. That is verbatim, okay? So the first thing to note is this whole business about jinn. So why do they say it's jinn? They say it's jinn because in the Quran, there's two references to the jinn and Muhammad, yaqra, reading the Quran to them. He's trying to convert them. And of course, in the Quran, it's very short stories as usual in the Quran. You can't get any details. We don't know where it is, when it is, how many times was this once, several times. But apparently he read the Quran or recited the Quran to the jinn, and they were all amazed by it. And in the Quran, it says they finally learned that God does not beget or have a wife, which of course is a swipe at Christianity. And then they run to their fellow jinn folk and explain to them that, Muhammad's a true prophet, and they all come and listen to him. All right. Then there's the hadith portion. All right. And there are hadith where they talk about jinn meeting with Muhammad. And a lot of people will, so they'll tell you these two correlate, right? The Quran correlates with the hadith about the jinn meeting with Muhammad. But now the question remains, what we're talking about, this particular hadith, are those jinn or are they not? Okay, we've already seen that according to the historical sources, these are humans. According to common sense, if you want to take a sort of secular worldview, they're humans, they're not jinn. And I should, before I forget, I should add that, when they say that it's the jinn and, let's say they're trying to get away from the whole sexual aspect, you can't, because the jinn, according to the Quran, have sex. They have genitalia. They copulate. So telling us that the Zut were jinn and they were riding Muhammad doesn't help. All right. And they're also made of fire, which implies that their members are made of fires. All right. So, it actually gets more graphic.
That would account for the pain.
Yeah, exactly. All right. It would account for the pain. And, I told you there's a sort of double meaning here. The word, which we can talk about a little bit, yarkabun, which is in Arabic. When people tell you that doesn't mean ride, no. Yarkabun, anyone who tells you it doesn't mean ride is a liar. It means, I have the dictionary right here. I can pull it up in front of you. I have two dictionaries, and it's a whole page. Dictionaries give you the main meaning. Then they go into subtle meanings. About half a page, it's all ride, mount, hop on. Okay, that's what yarkabun means. But now the new apologetic is, no, it doesn't mean that. It meant they were crowding around him because they were so eager to hear the recitation of the Quran. All right. But the other meaning that I didn't mention in the video of yarkabun, Arabic, it means to possess. Okay, so if these were jinn or supernatural beings, till this very day, if I'm speaking Arabic and I want to tell you that a spirit or a demon or a jinn possessed so-and-so, I say rakabu. Same verb, like to ride him, to get on top of him, to dominate him. All right. They can't get away from that problem, but they're trying to. So now they bring all right. So now let's go to this particular hadith. I've already told you the Quran says there's jinn, and then there are hadith which try to associate it with that particular Quranic rendition. And no one really even knows if they're talking about the same thing because, like I said, the Quran's very amorphous. But this particular thing, what they're trying to do is tell you, okay, even though it says al-Zut, it doesn't really mean the people. It's saying they kind of looked like them. So these were dark-skinned genies, right? Okay, apparently. And then they try to tell you, no, because they were so eager to hear, like I said, Muhammad, they were so crowding him. But there is nowhere, I just looked through 2 pages of the translation of the word yarkab, and nowhere does it appear as crowding or being around someone. It literally means to mount, to ride. The first few sentences of the word yarkabun, it says to ride a horse, to ride an animal, okay, to ride. And then later on, there's the sexual connotation, as I mentioned. All right. So the first thing that Muslims have to explain is, what is this talking about? Okay, ride, yarkabun does not necessarily have to be sex. I agree. It means like riding a horse. So what, these guys came and all night rode Muhammad like a horse? They were playing around all night. And is that what hurt him? Because as you know, the hadith ends up with him limping and being in extreme pain. And the Arabic, the English translations don't do it justice, but the Arabic says that he was in pain from mimma rakabu, which doesn't mean from riding him. It means from that which they did riding him. All right. So it's even more explicit. So these are the issues that Muslims have to deal with. And like I said, they've kind of wavered, one by insisting, no, you're getting it wrong. These are jinn and they're not riding him. They're just listening to him. And then there's another kind of apologia, which basically says, all right, there is the night of the jinn. And we know that Abdullah bin Mas'ud, the narrator of the hadith in question, was not present at the night of the jinn. So therefore, it's a weak and completely worthless hadith. All right. So even in their own arguments, they're contradicting one another. But Abdullah bin Mas'ud is actually a chief transmitter of hadith. He's very well known, very well respected. If you look at Ahmad bin Hanbal's Musnad, where this hadith first occurs, it's considered sahih. Ibn Kathir, who you mentioned earlier, when he talks about this hadith, he literally says this hadith is very strange, but he does not say it's weak or it's fake. All right. Because he doesn't know what to make of it. So we can use our common sense and try to, deduce what we're talking about here. You can say, and obviously, again, I like to tell you what people are saying because I don't want to take responsibility for this. Because I didn't come up with this. I've watched people talk about it, so it's not of my own. This isn't my own deduction. And B, just to let you know what's really being said in the Muslim Arab-speaking world. And it is what I summarized, which is basically Muhammad had a rendezvous pre-planned with these well-known, large, black, athletic-looking men from India, dark skin, not black, African, who are known for prominent genitalia. And he told his friend, for whatever reason, hey, you stay here. And then he went off, and they rode him literally all night because Abdullah Masoud, people ask me, where does it say all night? Well, he says we went out into the desert, night came, and then this goes on till daybreak, until the dawn of the sun. All right. So, and then that's when Muhammad comes back. Or if you want to go with this jinn theory, it really doesn't make it much better because the jinn are actually, they can have sex, including with humans. All right. And the word yarkab, which means ride, also means to possess. So this doesn't really help matters if you say it is the jinn, which is what they try to say. And this is why I think in the end, a lot of them are just trying to say, no, it is the jinn, and Abdullah Masoud was not present at the night of the jinn because in the hadith, Abdullah says, I wish I was there. All right. And so therefore, it's a completely fabricated hadith. Whereas a lot of other Muslims say, no, it is real, and we try to keep it with the jinn thing. But like I said, there's no reason to doubt Abdullah because if it's not the night of the jinn, then yeah, he was there. Why wouldn't he be there if he said he was?
Mm-hmm. And so as far as the meaning of rode him, so the main definition would be like riding an animal. Right. But then there's a sexual meaning similar to she was riding him, like in English and so on. Right. And then there's the spiritual meaning of possessed. So as far as whether this was men or they were jinn, as far as translating, the translation that would make least sense is riding him like an animal. Like if that translation would make the least sense. If it's a sexual connotation, that would seem to make the most sense. If it's talking about,
and keep in mind that he's in pain. Mm-hmm. If they're riding him like they're play horse acting, all right, but that he's in pain implies the latter suggestion, the sexual one.
And so if it's human beings, the most obvious meaning of them riding him would be the sexual meaning. If it's referring to jinn, then two meanings you're pointing out the two meanings would make sense.
Be worse.
Either sexual right. meaning, or they actually possessed him for the night,
or both at the same time. Maybe that's how they possessed
him. Or both.
Him.
They're banging him and possessing him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true.
And as you of all people know that there's a lot of accusations against Muhammad of being in league with demon forces. Mm-hmm. And there's the idea that demons, whether it's a succubus or incubus, and they copulate with humans. I mean, let your mind go wild with what it could be. And the point is, it's a very problematic hadith, as you can see.
And as far as Muhammad's first impression of his revelations in the cave, according to Ibn Ishaq, he thought he was possessed by something. Yeah. And it's actually his wife and her cousin who convinced him, no, you're a prophet. Well, he was convinced whatever was pressing on him. I'd be interested in some possible interpretations of what that could mean in light of other things.
Really, in light of what we just came across, what was pressing, man. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'd like to get Jai and DOC's thoughts on this. We'll just take these couple super chats here because a couple of these are for you, Raymond. But we in the biz call this topic the goat's revenge. Very rude. That is from the channel Goat Hub, although it is a favorite channel of lots of Pakistani guys. Cinco de Mayo was originally a pagan holiday until Constantine Christianized at the Council of Nicaea. Yeah, this is an ongoing joke that, AP looks more muscular today. Yeah, some people call you Buff AP because I'm normally live with AP.
I finally get the reference now.
Yeah. So he says, AP looks more muscular today. Love your work, Raymond, and your Al-Zut vid. You didn't shy away from being blunt and well ballsy. Christ is risen. Oh, hi, David.
Thanks.
And Sarah here says they rode him all night long. That's what they do. Yeah, that is what they.
Lionel
that's what they do.
Richie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of songs. I thought about putting that into my video.
You got to play that song. Yeah, you got to like.
I was concerned about the copyright thing because sometimes they'll let you slide
okay.
if it's a short clip, another time they'll just flag you. They'll flag you instantly, especially if it's the chorus of a song. But yeah, all night long. I could have just sang it. That would have been.
Do it in Arabic. Get the Arabic version.
Yeah. Ah, boy. All right. So, Jai, DOC.
Yo, so we'll share our screen here. We do have some slides on this.
So we found a very rare Muslim site where it's called sunnah2.com. Sunnah2, 2 as in the digit 2.com, /262. It's in the Arabic and the English, and it's correct. And the part here that you want, they actually put their Kaboon
in red.
Brother Raymond in the red.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, there it is.
There it is. There it is. Mm-hmm. And they put it in the English as well, Yarkaboon. And
did they put ride in English?
They did, and they came and started to ride.
Oh, nice.
Ride. Yeah,
ride.
Okay. That's proper.
So
that's proper Arabic. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have a Muslim translation. You can see because they put like SAW and all these other things. Muslim, right? Well, Muslim translation, and they're actually agreeing. So
and look what he said here: sound chain of narration.
Ooh.
Yeah.
At the end, it's
Sahih.
Sahih.
It's Sahih.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually went.
Why don't you read? Actually, you can read those underlined parts, to see how well they accord with because I just kind of paraphrase it, but yeah.
Okay, shall we do it? So, Ajay?
Yeah.
We'll go through the underlined parts here.
Then he, the narrator, mentioned a group of male members, Hanin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hanin,
that's the word. That's the word they use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who looked like Zut people. As Affan said, Allah willing, with no clothes on, but I did not see their genitals, tall and scrawny. And they came and started to ride, and then he put in between the Arabic word Yarkaboon.
Yarkaboon.
The messenger of Allah. And the Prophet began to recite to them, and they started to move closer and lean around me and get in my way, meaning Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is talking. And I became intensely terrified of them, so I sat down. And when the morning light broke, like what you said, brother, they began to go away. Then the Messenger of Allah came back exhausted and in pain, or practically in pain from how they had ridden him.
how they had ridden him, not just that they rode him, how they rode him.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's a very accurate translation. Good for them.
Yeah.
Wajan mimma rakibu here in the Arabic.
Yeah. Mimma.
Yep. Wajan mimma rakibu. He said, "Indeed, I am exhausted."
I feel so weak.
For some reason.
Then the Messenger of Allah put his head in my lap.
Yes. Very similar to the Dahi al-Kalbi story.
Yeah, the Dahi al-Kalbi story. Matter of fact, I'll pull those up here in a few minutes, and we'll take a look at the eerie similarities.
You see a lot of parallels there, yeah.
And the scrawny ones came with tall white garments on, but the Messenger of Allah had fallen asleep, and I became more intensely terrified than I was the first time.
Yep. And sound chain, Muslim Ahmed, and we thought, because Muslims, as the brother said, Raymond said, that they put a big deal on what does this word mean in the Arabic. So what we thought was, hey, why don't we go to some verses in the Quran where you have it used in different forms, like different verbal forms, and what do we see?
So you can, Surah 16 verse 8, you can appreciate it looks the same, similar, sorry. Here it says, and he created horses, mules, and donkeys for you to ride.
To ride.
So the ride bit is
so what they're showing you here is, look in the Arabic on top, the red, that's the exact same word used about what the Zut did. Now look at the translation down there. Ride. You see, that's the only meaning for it. But now they try to twist it around and tell you, no, there's other meanings for it. The only thing you can yarkab or terkab, ride, is like an animal. Either that or, like I said, there's a sexual connotation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not the only one. We've got another one.
Mhm.
Surah 40, verse 79. It's Allah who made for you the grazing animals upon which you ride.
Good job,
لتركبوا.
ya ikhwa.
Thank you. See here, تركبوا يركبون, similar. And
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
smoking gun,
43 verse 12.
you see?
Yeah.
See how similar these are?
Now it's mount. You see, same thing. Ride or
Yes.
mount.
He created for you all species, all of them, has made for you ships and animals, those which you mount. So ships, as in,
Like boats.
Hey,
the boat.
hey, we don't
Like,
have for everyone who's watching, we're talking about Ibn Masud here. So Ibn Masud, leave that up for a second. But Ibn Masud is the guy in this story who's watching from behind the Diddy line. And for all you who don't know, Ibn Masud comes up a lot when we're talking about the preservation of the Quran, because he objected to the current Quran when it was put out, and to Uthman burning all the Qurans. He even told his followers, hide your Qurans, do not hand them over to these guys to burn them. But anyway, he's one of 4 people that Muhammad said, if you want to learn the Quran, learn it from anybody. And he listed Ibn Masud as his top Quran reciter. But we don't actually have Ibn Masud's Quran anymore. Wouldn't it be interesting if we found Ibn Masud's Quran, and this verse actually said, and who created the species, all of them, and has made for you of ships and animals those which you mount, like the men of Al-Zut mounted Muhammad as I stood behind the Diddy line, watching in terror, sitting on my rear end, lest they do unto me what they were doing to my beloved prophet. That would be funny. No wonder they covered up his Quran and demanded that it be burned.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you guys brought this
also-
up. I'm glad you guys brought this up because, I really summarized it in English in that little video. But as you can see, this is kind of verbatim, exactly what it's almost worse than the way I presented it.
Yeah, and so at the very end, they give like a summary of all the different scholarly views, and so what Muslims will do is Muslims will highlight, oh, this scholar said it was weak, or that scholar said it was weak. So what we did the opposite. We showed which ones say that it's actually good, it's actually authentic. So
Bukhari reported it in Tarikh al-Saghir.
yes,
So we know Bukhari
Wow.
doesn't report.
yeah, he doesn't report weak.
Bukhari
Yeah.
is the top one.
Yeah. We see At-Tirmidhi as well. He said it's Hasan Gharib, which we have. This is a very strange wording, unless you go to
It
the Muslim
means-
sources. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hasan Gharib. What does it mean? Well, we go to the Islam web, and they define it for us. So it says the hadith which At-Tirmidhi says are Hasan Gharib is stronger than the hadith which he says Hasan only. So gharib, like, it means strange, but when you put it in this context, when he says it, it means it's stronger, it's more authentic. Yeah, and then the editors of this volume here, they say, we say that the men of At-Tirmidhi, they're trustworthy.
Yeah, رجال إسناد الترمذي ثقات.
ثقات, yeah.
رجال الصحيح, men
Yeah.
of صحيح hadiths.
Yep. So they're authentic, narrators. Al-Haythami as well. This is another famous name. And so we have like the various things here. So if everyone wants to screenshot it or whatever, you guys want to share this. This is like I said, you'll find other ones that say that it's weak and things, but we'll let the Muslims highlight that stuff because that's what they've been doing. But they're not highlighting the ones that say it's authentic.
Yeah, we do have Ibn Kathir, like you said, brother, saying is very strange, but he didn't say it was weak.
Exactly.
That's correct. But we just got the summary of Muhakkik here. He just said they're all men of authentic hadiths.
Yes.
Very good.
So yes, that's
it.
what we have.
It's very helpful. Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
stuff. That's
Can I give you a quick summary because I've grown senile in my elder age, and I just want to give you a 1 minute, like the point of all this, right?
Absolutely.
And the point of all this, thanks. The point of all this is, all right, you either can say it's fake, and as we saw, a lot of people say it's not, and there's good reason not to say it's fake. And if you don't say it's fake, I don't care if you say it's humans or if you say it's jinn, it's a problem. Because you got either humans or you got jinn, who we know copulate with humans and possess them. And both groups are riding and mounting the Prophet all night long to the point that he's in a lot of pain and he comes and faints exhausted in the lap of his friend. Okay, so that's, I think, what Muslims have to deal with. It's there. And, just calling it jinn is not going to get you out of the hole. That's a problem. It makes it even worse. So
Definitely makes it worse and doesn't get you out of the hole.
no pun intended. Come on now, keep it clean.
Yeah, very weird, very, very weird stuff. So yeah, guys, so they're basically two main issues here. So one is, did this happen? And there would be kind of a range of perspectives on this issue. Like, one, it happened exactly like it's recorded in the various hadiths and so on. Or two, it didn't happen at all. It's just completely fabricated, or something in there in between. Like, there's something that happened, something really weird that happened. And then, Muslims try to doctor the story in various ways. By changing details or adding or modifying the story as time goes on. So that's one issue. What here is actually authentic, and that's one of the ways the story is challenged by saying it's a weak hadith or something like that. And Giant DOC pointed out, nope, there are plenty of Muslims who grade this story as reliable. But I have to point out, because all you non-Muslims who are watching, don't make the mistake of falling into the idea that we always have to agree with their methodology and so on. I think their methodology is massively screwed up as far as how they weed out information. Basically, here's the issue, ladies and gentlemen. The methodology is developed over time. The methodology is developed over time. That's why you'll find these sources included in these collections, and it's later Muslims who are saying, no, that's unreliable, or that's reliable, and so on, because they're coming up with a methodology and so on. And actually, if you look at what non-Muslim hadith scholars, there aren't a lot of them, there are a few non-Muslim hadith scholars, they actually look at these gradings completely differently, and it's almost the opposite. When they see a perfect chain of perfectly reliable transmitters, it's almost along the lines of the principle of embarrassment. They look at that and say, that looks like something that was fabricated. Why? Because they didn't have this methodology, didn't exist at the beginning. You had people just sharing stories and stuff like this. But as far as here are the requirements for a Sahih hadith, that comes later, and that's developed over time. And so when they see a perfect chain, they look at that as that looks like a chain that someone would have invented if they were making up a story. When they see a broken chain or a chain that includes unreliable narrators, they think, oh, that shows that hadith is actually earlier, because if you were fabricating a hadith later on after the methodology had been invented, you would have given it a perfect list of transmitters if you were just making it up. Keep in mind, if you want to make up a story, you can make up a list of transmitters and so on. And so if this story was from later, after the methodology had been developed, and you're inventing a hadith, you would obviously invent a chain of perfectly reliable transmitters. And so if you see a weak hadith, it's very interesting situation when your average Muslim sees weak hadith, he goes, oh, can't believe that. When you're talking about the non-Muslim hadith scholars, they go, oh, weak chain? That means it's probably better than the perfect chain, because the perfect chain is more likely to be invented and the weak chain is less likely to be invented. And so they actually take that more seriously as something that comes from earlier. The point is, guys, when Muslims say, oh, it's a weak hadith, you can't use it or you can't quote it or something like that, do not fall for that. It's like when they come to our sources, do we say, here's our methodology and you have to use our methodology? Are they going to take that seriously? Here's the Bible. It's the infallible word of God, and you have to treat it as such throughout the duration of this discussion. Are they going to accept that? No, they don't even accept it when we show that their book affirms our book. They won't even go with what Allah says about our book when he tells us to go by our book and to judge by our book and so on. So they won't even go with Allah's methodology about our book, let alone ours. So the point is, Muslims can say, hey, from our perspective, we're not going to use this hadith. We think it's weak. We're free to say we don't have a lot of confidence in your methodology, and therefore we're going to use this. We're going to use this source anyway, even if it was just a weak hadith. My point is, even if you have a hadith or something like that that they would regard as completely weak, we can use that and apply actual historical principles. We can treat it just like a historical source and say, does this look like something that's authentic? Does this look like something that's going to be fabricated? We can use actual principles of historians to examine these sources and not their methodology, which historians actually think is pretty. They don't think it's the only way to do history like Muslims do. With that said, you have plenty of Muslim scholars who do not grade this as a weak hadith, and therefore Muslims have a problem. So that's one issue: is did this actually happen? Is this a reliable source? Is this something that's based on something that actually happened? And then the other issue is, what in the name of common sense does this mean? What is this about? What is all of this about? Is this about jinn riding Muhammad or possessing Muhammad? Is this about men of al-Zut doing something to Muhammad? Is it sexual? Is it something else? I have to say, I've been saying this for a while, but when you've got all these Muslim dawah guys, and they'll just flat out lie, and they'll say Rebecca in the Bible's 3, and they'll say that in response to saying that Aisha was 9. We'll say, hey, why did Muhammad have sex with a 9-year-old girl? And they'll say, oh, but Rebecca in the Bible was 3. And we'll say, chapter and verse, show us that. It's just a lie. It's just a lie. They'll lie. They'll say, but the Catholic Encyclopedia says Mary was 12 when she got pregnant. It does not. It says the opposite. It says we have no idea. And so when all your dawah guys are spreading lies, guess what? I'm not going to tell Christians to lie in response. There's no scenario I'm going to say lie. You could say, if you're joking or something, that's one thing. But I'm not going to tell Christians to lie in response to lies. I will say, don't give the benefit of the doubt in response. If you're dealing with a bunch of guys who are lying and they think it's fine to lie about people in the Bible, Mary, Jesus, Abraham, Isaac, and so on, they just think it's free to lie. Okay, don't tell me to give you the benefit of the doubt if something in your sources sounds really, really messed up. I'll go with exactly what it sounds like. And so on this story, just sounds like something pretty creepy. And you guys, go with our scholars who said it's weak and don't believe that it happened. No, why would I do that? It looks like something real. It doesn't look like something that someone would make up. And then what does it sound like? It sounds like either this was some dudes that met with Muhammad out in the desert for a late night orgy. That's what it sounds like. And that Ibn Masud, maybe Muhammad just liked people watching, and so I want someone watching. And then it looks like a story where Ibn Masud starts passing this story around. Man, you guys aren't going to believe what I saw in the desert the other night with Muhammad. And then over time, Muslims start, maybe it was just jinn. Maybe it was just jinn. Not realizing this doesn't help, because now you got jinn who are banging their prophet and so on, or possessing him, or both. So yeah, I'm not inclined to just give you the benefit of the doubt on anything anymore. Just got to go with what this stuff looks like.
Let me throw out a little or actually a polemic for Muslims that I've been watching. So when this comes up and they try to show Christians, you shouldn't interpret it the way as you just delineated it, which I agree with, you, David. And they're like, why would you delineate it that way? And then they say, well, what if we took the gospel where, and I'm pretty sure it's the Gospel of John, where, the beloved disciple or apostle John lays his head on the lap or on the bosom of Jesus. And they say, well, look, we can twist this around. We can turn it into a homosexual affair. We can do this and that. And my point, and it's kind of like, no, that's pretty weak. It's one thing to put your head on the bosom of someone who you love. I mean, children do to their moms and their dads, okay? It's another thing to go and ride someone all night long. And that's really the difficulty that they got to deal with. And that's why they play all these semantic games and try to twist the word, the Arabic word yarkabun, to try to tell you it doesn't mean what it means, but it means exactly what it means. The only time you use that word is to ride an animal, okay? And then the other thing is, okay, so let's say it's not sex, all right? Okay, so they rode him like what? Muhammad got on all fours and they were playing around on a donkey. And
they're playing
they
giddy
sat
up
on top of him. Yeah, and and then again, would that really hurt him to the point that he can't walk and he's limping from how they rode him? The way the way it was translated. So it's very, like you said, like the Ibn Kathir thing. It's just it's a weird oddity. We don't know how to make sense of it. And so the easiest way, of course, for most Muslims is to tell you, oh yeah, it's a da'if or a weak hadith. But you see that all the time with Muslims where something's not, it's the chain of transmission, whether it's good or bad or whatever, but it's in the hadith, and it gets. In other words, amongst Muslims nowadays, what's weak is something that's embarrassing, and what's strong is something that's not embarrassing and decent or neutral. All right, but the fact is, this particular hadith and Muslim bin Hanbal, and there's other books. I put a few of them. There's even more. I didn't put them in my in the detail box, and they're all being taught in Al-Azhar. And see, this is the issue. It's Al-Azhar, of course, would be the most prestigious Islamic university. Whatever it teaches is considered mainstream Sunni Islam, and it's kind of like, well, if this is something embarrassing or you don't want, or why don't you get rid of it? You see what I mean? You can't keep it, and you can't keep it in your texts, and you can't teach it. And then when we bring it up, you tell us, oh yeah, it's not real. We don't really accept it. And that seems to be the case with so many problematic hadiths. They keep them, they use them, and then when they get exposed, they tell you, no, it's weak. You don't worry about it.
Or they change the translation. But yeah, you're right. This is an issue that keeps coming up over and over again. It's like if you go back 15 years, that's why I brought up the claim that Aisha was actually way older. She was 18 to 20 and so on. That's from like 15 years ago, when the Muslim argument, one of the most common Muslim arguments was Muhammad's character was so perfect, he had to actually be from God. There's no way a guy could have a character this perfect unless God is actually with him. And so on. So we started pointing out things like Muhammad and Aisha. What'd they say back then? You're a liar. You're a liar. That's a fabrication. That's a weak hadith, and so on. That's what they said back then. Yeah, now pretty much all the Dawah guys acknowledge this. Why? Because we kept pushing. And then you have the translation issue that comes up over and over again. Like there are hadith. There's the hadith where Aisha says, Muhammad struck me in my chest, which caused me pain. And so as soon as we would point that out, hey, it says Muhammad hit her in her chest. Then all of a sudden, after we use that for a while, then they'll change the translation. It'll say he gave me a shove. And so they'll actually modify their translations when they start realizing that we're using something against Islam. You have the tongue-sucking hadith where Muhammad's sucking on the tongue of his grandsons and so on, and then they'll change those translations now and so on. So yeah, every time we use something for a while, they'll start arguing for different translations, and basically all their responses, even going with, oh, that's just weak hadith, that's just this, that's just that, or you don't know the Arabic for this or that. It's like they're taking advantage of people's ignorance, because a regular person who finds out about this and brings this to his Muslim friends and says, "Hey, what's going on with this? It's a Muhammad out in the desert, and they're doing something."
No, it doesn't mean what you think. It means something different.
Oh, it's a weak hadith. All scholars grant that this is weak. They could just make things up, because your average person, even someone who hears this story, isn't going to know how to respond to these things. And then they'll say, "Oh, it doesn't mean right. It means they were crowding around him or something like that."
But that's why I'm telling you, to Arab speakers and Arab listeners, this does not work at all. We all know what that word means, 110%. All right. So when they can pull that off, you're right, amongst ignorant non-Arab speaking people. But to Arab speakers, and I'm sure like Jai and DOC, they'll agree. When you hear that word, okay, I know exactly what that means. It either means you're riding an animal, or you're mounting, or you're doing something sexual. It doesn't mean anything else than that. Everyone knows that. But you're right. They of course play around and they twist it around. And if you don't know any better, well, you're gonna defer to the Arab speaker who's telling you you're wrong. Okay, but I'm one of them. I'm telling you you're not. That's what it means.
And so for everyone who's watching, I'm pointing this out because, again, this happens over and over again. We bring something to the light to popularize it. And then as you go out and try to share this information with other people, you'll get, you're ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about. It's weak. It's this, it's that. You can't trust this. You don't know what the Arabic means and so on. Just no, keep pushing. Eventually the truth works its way. All the responses they're giving, eventually they will be corrected on all this stuff. And if you fast forward 5 years from now, this will just be taken for granted as something weird and creepy about Muhammad. So, yeah, that's
among the many other things.
Yeah, among the many other things. In fact, I'll share one here in a second. Well, I did want to point out an eerie parallel with with the story of Diha al-Kalbi. Oh, by the way, Giant DOC, I understand it's late over there. I wanted you guys to share that because you actually had some of the stuff you wanted to put on the screen as far as the source, and then with the Quran and so on. But I understand it's late over there, so if you guys need to cut out, just you can cut out.
Yeah, we'll just say one last thing. We agree with you guys 100% on that. And what we tell Muslims all the time is, hey, if you guys can show us in the dictionary, then prove us wrong.
Show me Raqaba in the dictionary means the crowd.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's it. Because you're not gonna win otherwise. To say ride is the crowd, it sounds exactly the same as in English. If I tell you ride is the crowd, like it sounds just
it sounds weird to your ears. Yeah.
Just as ridiculous. But
let me show you right here. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, here's the most respected Arab Muslim Arabic to English dictionary, the Hans Ver dictionary, and I'm trying to show you the yarkab or rakaba, and see, I don't see how, if you can see how long it is. None of that says crowd. It's all variations. It's all variations of ride, mount, get on top of, and have sex with. So
exactly. And I wanted to say. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to share this ridiculous comment here. Olaf Schultz says, D. Wood, I appreciate your efforts, but it feels like Dawah has already won. Somehow being a Muslim has become the cool thing. I don't know where in the world you are, Olaf. Germany or something like
gay.
That? Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, Olaf. Dawah is crumbling. We can't even get these guys to debate these issues. We're challenging them on everything. The Islamic dilemma, they get completely wrecked every time. We showed up to Speaker's Corner. They were basically running from Christian, and they're dealing with what they call the avalanche of apostasy. They called it that. Every one of their arguments that they've been using for decades, the scientific miracles, the perfect preservation of the Quran, all of that has come crumbling to the ground. What are you talking about, dude? Dawah is in shambles. Last year was the worst year on record for Dawah and how much they crumbled, and now look at what's happening. All their Dawah guys are in all these scandals. They won't argue any of these points. We challenge them over and over again. Come face us on the Islamic dilemma. Come face us on these things. They won't come near us. They won't come near anyone who's familiar with the Dawah script. So, go, just trying to, they've already won. Go away with that nonsense. Go crawl into a hole and cry yourself to sleep and just say they've won. Meanwhile, we'll continue wrecking them. It's what we do.
Yeah, not cool. Not cool.
No, extremely lame. Cool. Yeah, being a baby, man.
Yeah.
This is the golden age of wrecking Dawah. You were right in the middle of the golden age of wrecking Dawah, and you're like, but I see lots of Muslims out there. We've lost. Oh, my goodness.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. But I wanted to say something about this mix, not sahih or not authentic argument. It doesn't hold, because if you have a mix of weak narrations and strong narrations, the strong ones strengthen the weak. And that's why they always summarize saying this is strong, this is authentic. Because imagine you have two people witnessing the same thing. One of them is unreliable and the other one is reliable, and they both say the same thing. That means it happened. The reliable person strengthens the other one. Then that means it happened. That's a concept also in Isnad, by the way.
Yeah.
That's why the man summarized, summarized and said, yeah, they are the authentic men.
Yeah. Just so everyone knows, a historian. This is in history. In history, this is called in the historical method. This is called multiple attestation. In other words, if you have one person reporting something, and if you only have one source on something, it may be true, and that may be a good source and so on. It may be completely correct, but it's stronger if you have multiple sources on an issue. And so you do have multiple sources for this story, multiple chains and so on. But it's interesting. You even have Muslims who kind of have a similar principle to multiple attestation and how this can strengthen something. And Ibn Taymiyyah, when he was talking about hadiths, he was talking about what are called Sahih Mursal. And these are if you have chains that are missing something. And so an individual chain may be considered weak for some reason or something like that. But if you have multiple chains, you can actually look at the different chains and sort of combine them into one strong chain. But his reasoning was, hey, if you have this chain and there's some weakness in it, and you have this chain and maybe you can't trust that transmitter, and you have this chain, like how likely is it that all of these chains are reporting the same thing and yet they're all weak? Isn't it more likely that they're reporting something that happened, and that's why you ended up with all these different chains reporting the same thing? So it's a similar principle, but yeah, so this doesn't look good, but again, everyone who's watching, we're looking at this just from their perspective of, if all you have is the story, even if it said it's weak. Keep in mind, weak does not mean does not happen. Saying a chain is weak does not mean this did not happen. It means it wouldn't meet the requirements for to consider something like really, really, really clearly, indisputably strong or something like that. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. So we would be free, even if we thought this was weak, we'd be free to say, well, we think this actually happened. We think this clearly happened. But you actually have historians who, what's that? Oh, hang on. Raymond cut out there.
Oh,
He's back.
no.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we'll probably have to catch up on the rest of the live stream tomorrow.
no
But
problem.
yeah, it was great to join you guys.
Oh.
He's left again.
That's all right. I can take.
Oh, can you hear me? No.
Oh,
Hey,
can hear
I don't
you.
know how I'm hearing you, because
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Something's happening.
I know absolutely
Must be
nothing about what's going on.
It's the gin. It's the gin, huh?
Yeah, if you want to hang up and call back in, because you're.
All right. Let me hang up.
Hang on. Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah, Giant DOC, you can cut out. I'll
okay,
get Raymond
cool.
back
All
on.
right.
All right.
God bless you.
All right.
Okay,
Catch y'all
take
later.
care. Bye.
All right, Raymond cut out for a second, but we'll get him back. And let's see. There we go. Got you back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Like I said, it must be El Zut.
Yeah, it's the Al-Zut. No, there can always be connection issues and stuff. All right, let's take a couple super chats. And oh, by the way, anytime you need to cut out, let me know, and I'll just hang out for a while.
Actually, you know what? I'm not going to cut out, but I'm going to go get I need my my cord for my computer because it's going to die. So I'm going to.
Okay,
I'm going to go.
Yeah, I'll just take a couple
plug
super
it in.
chats while you. Mhm.
Okay, go.
Then we'll talk about Dio when you get back.
Okay.
All right, I'll take a couple super chats here. Let's see. Muslims be a burning tree complicated for no reason. There's always a reason. Dr. Ibrahim, could you recount? He's not here. So sorry. Dr. Ibrahim, could you recount what Thomas Jefferson and other founding fathers' attitudes towards Islam? Also, why were the U.S. Marine Corps founded? We know the answers to these things. Let's see. Hi, Giant. Now that we have all these comments that are for Giant DOC after they left. Hey, Giant DOC, kind of off topic, but I can answer this one. Can I use Quran 244 for Islamic dilemma, although you read the scriptures implying they have it? Oh, hi, David. Yes, absolutely, but just keep in mind, 244 is part of one section that is 240 to 244. So you've got 240, which says it's talking to the children of Israel. Then you have 241 that specifically says you should believe in the Quran because the Quran is confirming what you have. And therefore, when you get to verse 44, although you read the scriptures, that's connected to what just happened where he says that he's confirming the scriptures. So you definitely can include that, but include it as one passage. So when we normally quote 244, 241, we treat it as one passage. And let's see. Hunter says, how am I just hearing about Muhammad's desert fun for the first time? I'd ask why I'm not surprised, but, well, it is Muhammad we are talking about. Yeah, it's just a story where it's in Musnad Ahmed, in the English translation and so on. You can find English translations of this hadith and so on, but most of the sources are only available in Arabic. And so if you hear it, it's going to be from an Arabic-speaking Christian usually, or ex-Muslim, but it's not one of those things where it's like all over the sources and all over their main sources, and people are just quoting it left and right. In other words, when you hear this story from an Arabic-speaking Christian and you want to share it, well, most of the sources aren't even available in English, so it makes it hard to share it, and so that's why it hasn't spread around as much. Someone needs to bring this topic to Joe Rogan. Yeah, that'd be fun. Please get Adam Seeker on. Would love that talk. He can jump in sometime. I'm so looking forward to the next debate with Robert. Oh yeah, that'd be funny. Yeah, this could be used in a debate with Robert. What would you use on a Muslim who uses Bart Ehrman? Well, step one would be Bart Ehrman's view of Jesus does not line up with what Muslims believe at all. Bart Ehrman says one of the most indisputable facts of history is that Jesus died by crucifixion. So that would go against Islam. Apart from that, what Bart Ehrman believes about the Bible even does not line up with Islam. You can ask Bart Ehrman, if examining manuscripts, do you ever get to a Jesus who doesn't die by crucifixion, who doesn't rise from the dead? Do you ever find that? Do you ever find a version of the Bible where Jesus lines up with Islam? Say no in a heartbeat. I know because I've asked him. So those are some of the things to point out. Dean responded. Please respond to him. I wouldn't mind responding to Dean responds. We can always have a follow-up show on this issue and go through what the sources say. Muhammad was the first victim of the Pakistan grooming gangs. By the way, the Juts are the Jat people of India and Pakistan. Most Sikhs are Jats too. Ooh, so these were the pre-Sikhs. No wonder these guys don't like Sikhs. Does Raymond watch The Adventures of Shake It Off 2? I see he is starring in the next adventure. I would guess not. Raymond is when I had him on last year, it was clear that he wasn't spending a lot of time on YouTube. So I don't imagine that he spends a lot of time watching YouTube stuff. Let's see. Here we go.
You there?
Yep.
Hang on a second. I got some Arabic guy screaming because like somehow my audio is cross connected to some guy screaming in Arabic. All right, which is actually interesting. I turned it off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. When I left and I was getting my cord, before I called you, I had a YouTube video of some Arab guy talking, his apologia for this particular hadith. And when you left, it came back on. And you know what he was saying?
What?
The problem is, of course, yarkabun, the word I translate as ride, it means in this context to crowd him. But because these people have dirty minds, they turn it into a sexual thing. And yet, it is actually Islamic scholars who translate the word yarkabun to mean you can having sex with a woman as well.
Yeah, and then Jai and DOC even pulled up, that's a Muslim site on this hadith, and they translated it as ride.
Yeah. So, because that's the thing. See, like if you were to ask ChatGPT and say, hey, I have a hadith, and it sees that it's people riding Muhammad, it's going to tell you, no, it means this, means that. But if you just ask it the Arabic word, it's going to go, yeah, of course it means ride. So these are the kind of games we're constantly confronting.
And it's an issue with ChatGPT and Grok and all these. You basically have to, as you're pointing out, you kind of have to trick it into giving accurate information, because here's the thing, everyone, because they do this with me. I'll make a claim, and then even non-Muslims will go, no, I checked with ChatGPT and it said this is false and you're making this up. And it's like, they don't realize when you ask ChatGPT or Grok something, they're searching for online content about this. Guess what? They're getting the responses of the Dawah guys. They're getting the responses of Muslims in there, and they're taking it and saying, oh, no, because the word doesn't mean that, because they're including in their analysis all these Muslim responses, and they don't do a good job distinguishing between someone who's lying and someone who's telling the truth. A computer doesn't, a software or program or a bot doesn't understand, oh, this guy is just trying to defend his prophet and is making things up. They don't know that kind of stuff. And so,
but if I can interject, while I agree with you, this thing is sinister enough, because I decided, I was having an adult beverage one night and I was deciding to play games with ChatGPT, and I started off asking it, what seemingly innocent questions, and I kept building up to it. And I finally, it was about Islam, and I was asking it things, and it gave me the politically correct answers, like you're saying. And then finally, I was like, I asked, it was something like this hadith, and I was like, "Is there a story about Muhammad being mounted or ridden by men or genies?" It was like, "No, there's no such thing." And then I wrote, "Well, what about the hadith in Ahmed bin Hanbal where it says it?" And it said, "Oh, well, yeah,
Oh, that
there
one.
is that one, but I thought you wanted, like it understands. It's
Yep.
actually, I mean, when they call it just an automatic thing, which I would think it is, like you, but it has it actually, there's some kind of synaptic nerves going on, and it kind of understands, and it's a dangerous apologist, basically.
Mm-hmm. A couple questions here. Dr. Ibrahim, would you consider the Crusades as successes or failures? Why, in your opinion, why did Christian Europe fail to retake Jerusalem? He's asking some.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, obviously, there were failures. There's no way around that because the goal was Jerusalem, and they lost it for Christendom. And in your opinion, why did well, and the reason is because Europe lost its Christianity. So it's the Crusaders, if you really look at it, and that's what my most recent book is about. We'll talk about it at some point when it gets closer. But it just shows you how over the centuries after the First Crusade, the core of the people who believed in Crusader ideals kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until there were nobody but the military orders, the Knights of the Temple and the Hospital and the Teutonic Knights and so forth. These guys were still like the First Crusaders. And if you had a lot of them like you did in the First Crusade, yeah, you could have actually, the Crusaders would have been a success. But really, the sort of secularization of the West and Europe, that's been going on for centuries, and you can really watch. It's pretty interesting to see how it happened. And I would say that is really the real reason that the Crusades ultimately failed, because you went from having, let's say, 90% of European Christians maintaining those ideals to, in 1600, having maybe 20%. And then in 2025, well, nothing, because men think they're women. So anyway,
there was a study, UK study, of how many people would be willing to fight for their nation if they had to. And among the young generation, so like the 18 to 34 or whatever it is, it was like 11% of people. If it was a matter of saving their country, would they fight for? It was like 11%. And so pretty darn bad. Yep. Let's see.
Am I freezing? Because I'm freezing on my
occasionally
end. Am I okay on your end?
Yeah, that's an internet thing, and it's the main issue is whether we can hear you, and we hear you fine. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's it doesn't matter if
okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Raymond Ibrahim, your book Defenders of the West is fantastic. I would highly recommend it, and I look forward to reviewing it live.
Well, thank you very much. I'll look forward to it too.
Saturn here says Zahir ibn Haram must be cold to have cuddled Muhammad. And here we have David. Why didn't you use this against Robert Spencer? And that's because I was using other things against Robert Spencer where I have more sources. But yeah, as far as this particular issue, wasn't using that. And I had something very similar. I had the issue of Muhammad and Dihya al-Kalbi. So this, I did want to share the sort of eerie parallel here. Let me bring this up. So look at this. This Sunni source narrated Abu Uthman. I got the news that Jibreel came to the Prophet while Salama was present. Jibreel started talking to the Prophet and then left. The Prophet said to Salama, do you know who it was? Or a similar question. She said, it was Dihya, a handsome person amongst the companions of the Prophet. Later on, Salama said, by Allah, I thought he was none but Dihya till I heard the Prophet talking about Jibreel in his khutbah, religious talk. So, guys, understand what's going on here? Salama sees Muhammad with a guy, and she assumes it's Dihya al-Kalbi, who is known for being a handsomest young man in Arabia. So she's that's what she thinks. And then later, Muhammad makes it clear that when you see him in his house with Dihya al-Kalbi, it's actually the angel Gabriel that he's with. And it's funny because we have this in both Sunni and Shia sources.
It's so the jinn.
Yeah, this is a Shia source. So this is al-Kafi. And so once Abu Dhar came to the Messenger of Allah while Jibreel was in the form of Dihya al-Kalbi, one of the companions of the Holy Prophet, in a private meeting with the Messenger of Allah. So there would be these private meetings, and they all think it's Dihya al-Kalbi, but it's actually the angel Gabriel. And you go down to the next paragraph. When Gabriel left, Abu Dhar came to the Holy Prophet, and the Messenger of Allah said to him, "O Abu Dhar, what stopped you from offering us the greeting of peace when you passed by?" He said, "O Messenger of Allah, I thought the person with you was Dihya al-Kalbi in a private meeting for something of your affairs." The Messenger of Allah said, That was Jibreel. That was Gabriel." And then you have these creepy ones. Hudhaifa answered, "The people used to enter upon the Prophet whenever they wanted. So you could just walk in and talk to Muhammad whenever you wanted. But then look what happens. The Prophet then prohibited them from entering upon him while he was in a meeting with Dihya al-Kalbi, right? Whenever he's in a meeting with Dihya al-Kalbi, not to interrupt Muhammad. And then you go down a little. So I'll go down to the next paragraph. Hudhaifa added, "One day I came to the Prophet for some matter, hoping to meet him alone. When I arrived at the door, I looked and found a curtain covering the door. I raised it and was about to enter. That's what we were accustomed to do. Then I saw Dihya sitting beside the Prophet who was sleeping, and his head was on the lap of Dihya." Notice these separate confirmations. So Muhammad liked to sleep with his head on the lap of some guy. So they see him, it's Dihya al-Kalbi, but Muhammad's got a different story. So this continues later on. See down there at the bottom. Then Imam Ali, so this is the third paragraph there. Then Imam Ali asked me to enter, so I entered and sat down. Soon after that, the Prophet woke up and he smiled when he saw the face of Imam Ali. Then he told him, "O Abu Hassan, from whose lap did you take my head?" Ali answered, "From the lap of Dihya al-Kalbi." Then the Prophet replied, "This was Gabriel. So what did you tell him when you entered, and what did he tell you? What did he tell you? What did you hear from him?" He didn't say, "Yeah, I'm Dihya al-Kalbi," did he? So guys, notice the parallels. Notice the parallels there, everyone, that you've got Muhammad. It really looks like something is going on. Right? Really, really sounds like that. Looks like that, sounds like that. And yet the explanation is, no, when I'm behind the curtain with Dihya al-Kalbi, that's really the angel Gabriel. When you see Dihya al-Kalbi climbing out the window in the middle of the night, that's really the angel Gabriel. And then you have this other story about Muhammad out in the desert, and he's got his buddy watching from behind the Diddy line, and is watching what's going on. And then, oh, yeah, these are jinn out there mounting Muhammad, not all these guys. And, oh, Muhammad's all tuckered out again, and he has to go to sleep with his head on the guy's lap. It's like weird parallels in completely different sources. So that look, oh, go ahead.
No, and you're absolutely right, but it gets worse and worse because,
Oh no! Hey, one second. I think you're on a delay now because it sounds like you're like 10 seconds behind whenever I say something.
You want me to call back? Should I call back? Call back?
If you can actually shutting down your computer and restarting. I don't know if you want to do that. That usually fixes a delay problem. If you wanted to.
No, you disappeared.
Oops. Yeah. That's been happening frequently. Let me just send him a message, guys, telling him that shutting down will actually fix that. Shutting down your computer and restarting usually fixes the delay. All right, just send him that. So take a couple super chats while we're waiting. Ya Muslim, so proud of you brothers for exposing Islam and Muhammad, the PDF file. God bless you and protect you and give you strength to fight in Christ's name. Thank you, thank you, thank you. These are fun times. Let's see. I guess queers for Palestine are more on the nose than we thought. Yeah, that's not why you had this alliance, but it is funny that you actually ended up with an alliance that makes sense. David, Muslim might say he rode a donkey, a.k.a. means donkeys rode him. Yeah, you can get all sorts of things that people will say. A rainbow. Oh, that's a super sticker. Thank you. Thank you for that one. In a movie theater near you, Brokeback Desert. And we have the channel Brokeback Desert. Homo activities are all over Islamic history, like the all-men Taliban hiding in caves for years with no women. They even go after boys, like in the documentary Dancing Boys of Afghanistan. Yeah, and Inspiring Philosophy shared a source that said it basically was completely normal for most of Islamic history up until Western nations started calling that stuff out. Then they tried to hide it more. He is an honorable prophet. He took one. He is an honorable prophet. He took one for the team. His magic circle had protective power, and his sensual strength. 30 men, so him strong. 30 men, so him strong. That is true. And all right, we got Raymond back. There we go.
Hey, David, can you see and hear me?
Yep, I see and hear you. Do you see and hear me at the same time?
I do. Great.
Oh, good,
okay.
good. Yeah, no lag anymore. No lag anymore. You're good.
Nice. Sorry about that. So all I was going to say is add on to what you just said, which is that, what we're talking about is sort of a sexual, perverse, homosexual encounter in the night. And the thing is, you can kind of ignore that, put that on the side if it's an aberration, but it's not, as you were indicating. We have a lot of weird sexual stories about Muhammad that indicate homosexual proclivities. You already mentioned that, sucking on the tongues. There's another one where all these random guys that would come up to Muhammad and would get under his shirt or his jalabiya and get excited and say, Muhammad, what's the one thing that we don't have to ban or forbid? And he would say, water. But if you look into the sources, water means male semen. So it's almost like a bunch of men were rubbing up on him and, like simulating sex. That's actually what in a hadith. I was actually planning on writing something about it or doing a video. Maybe we can talk about that if it's not well known already. So my point is, if it was just that particular hadith of Muhammad having a rendezvous with, these jinn or al-zut or whatever the case may be, we could maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. But we've got other problematic sexual, especially homosexual, hadith that go a long ways to sort of confirm what we're discussing.
Yeah, so we've got multiple independent attestation of some weird stuff going on with Muhammad, and it's kind of too much to cover up. It's like, it's if you had one thing and one weak hadith and so on, and it could be interpreted in multiple ways, then you might say, okay, we'll give the benefit of the doubt here. When you find this stuff kind of all over the place and in a bunch of Muslim sources, and it's in Sunni sources and Shia sources and stuff, it's like, explain this.
There's a pattern. There's a pattern.
There's definitely a pattern. Pro butt mo mud penis be what's wrong with what's up with the weird stuff, man? We know it's a weird topic. Doesn't mean you have to post weird comments. Dawa ain't recovering from this. No, it's not. They're gonna try for a while, and they'll be able to get a lot of people to think there's nothing here, and we're just gonna keep. It
doesn't mean ride. You have a dirty mind. It means crowd.
Yeah. Jeffrey says, have you considered the hadith a perverse corruption of Jacob wrestling with God in Genesis 32? Muslims have a long history of doing this with the Bible. There is this thing. Yeah, you do have lots of stories in the Muslim sources that seem like they're corruptions of stories from earlier sources, especially lots of stories in the Quran. But on this particular issue, that seems like a really weird corruption. We're going to take this and we're going to make it about a bunch of dudes from Al-Zut riding Muhammad all night long and him coming back in all kinds of pain. You could, because, Jacob came back and he's like, oh, my hip. So Muhammad, my butt. So I don't know, I guess you.
And, I said it in the video, but maybe we should take a second to discuss how, okay, and here's what's really, interesting. If you do independent research, all right, so we have the hadith, we have the matan, we have what's being said in the Islamic canon, right? But then you can look at these ethnographies written by Arab literary sources, which are not, Islamic per se, but they're Arabic. And all of a sudden you find that al-Zut, these people, have large penises. All right. Now, this doesn't come out in the hadith, all right? Mm-hmm. but rather it comes out in other sources. So it really gets kind of really problematic here. It's not just tall. They're described tall, lean, as in muscular, like very athletic. All right. Tall, athletic black men, basically, with large phalluses. That's, if you combine all the sources, that's the image you get. And they meet Muhammad for a pre-planned rendezvous, which all night long basically is about them mounting him and riding him. And then he returns in pain and suffering. And then, as I said in that video, again, I'm connecting. I'm not saying this is necessarily what it meant, but there is, maybe I'm forgetting the source, but I think it's in Al-Qurtubi or another source where, he has a tafsir or an exegesis about Muhammad's description, both in the Hadith and the Quran, of paradise. And in one of them, he talks about how the vagina never quits and the penis is always erect. That phrase in Arabic is the identical phrase of how the Zut's penis is described in literary sources. Okay, because in other words, that's the trope, right? That's the trope, how they're known. So it's kind of interesting, and again, this is not my thought. I'm trying to share with you what the polemics are from the Arabic side. And everyone is saying, oh, he really had a great time, that he went on as a personal joke to himself to convince his followers that paradise is going to be full of sex with these hard, erect penises. Little do they know, it doesn't mean you are going to have it. It means there's a guy there.
Yeah,
you're the recipient.
You're on the receiving end. You're on the receiving end of a.
Right. And again, I must say, this isn't my deduction. This is what everyone is saying who knows Arabic and who has studied this. So I'm just trying to even the playing field so everyone knows what's going on.
Yep, and this is the new thing for everyone to popularize. So, guys, especially earlier on when Jai and DOC, I put the link, the source where Jai and DOC pointed it, showed the source on a Muslim site. I actually put the link to that. You might need to refresh, but I put the link to that in the description box. They even translated it as ride, so you can ask your Muslim friends if this is wrong. Why is it here? It says it's a reliable chain, and says that, and they translate it as they rode him. So lots of. And
things. I like how they showed in other various Quran translations where that same Arabic word is. It's always ride, all right.
And then one said mounted, and then one said mounted, as you pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Now they're going to change all those translations to crowded.
And they actually do that, man. I don't know how many times I've cited something, quoted it, and then I go back to the link a year later and it's gone. And It's a whole different meaning, So yeah, they actually do that.
Oh, that's the thing. Once we start sharing it, that's why everyone got to screenshot it now, then share the link, because 2 months from now, 5 months from now, a year from now, all of a sudden it'll change and the translation will change or the source won't be there anymore.
All right, so let's talk about something very important. The translation they showed, which had Arabic and English, I believe, it said, that Abdullah bin Mas'ud saw them they were naked. And then it said, and I saw it written in Arabic and English, that he could not see their genitalia. Now, in my original video, I didn't mention that part, and there's a reason. Because guess what? When I first read this hadith almost 20 years ago, it was not there. It didn't say anything about it said they were naked, but it didn't say I did not see their genitalia. All right. And I think that's an interpolation that's been added in later. This is sort of damage control that has been introduced by Al-Azhar of let's, try to nullify this by saying, hey, there were no penises involved because you never saw them. But at the same time, you got to wonder, you got to wonder, can you hear me? Something popped up. Anyway. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have to wonder, it could mean something else too. In other words, by saying I didn't see the penises. So in the hadith, he says Muhammad made the line and then he went as a stone throw, which can be pretty far for a 7th century Bedouin. All right. He even says a stone throws or even further. All right. And it's nighttime and they're dark skinned. So it's going to be hard to see them. So it's almost like it could also be interpreted as he's trying to see their penises and he can't.
I was trying to catch a peek, but I couldn't. Dang it!
Yeah, exactly. Because they're so far and it's dark and they're dark. And I was trying to look at their penis. I didn't see it. All right. So So even that doesn't really like help anything, but it doesn't mean anything because some people try to say, oh, he didn't see the penis because they're jinn. No, but the Quran makes it clear that jinn have penises and they do have sex. So that's not what he means. I just wanted to bring that up because that's another one of the little. But also, when I first saw this hadith in Arabic and that guy in the Library of Congress showed it to me, it was not there. I honestly believe now that with the advent of the internet, Muslims are going back and they're doctoring and changing hadiths and they're adding things in, even in the most prestigious websites, universities. They're doing it as a part of damage control to try to cover up for what's going on.
Not surprising at all. That's what dawah is, basically, trying to cover things up. Would love to see Macho Man Muhammad Hijab be confronted with this. Yep. Hijab would love this hadith. Hope you go on. I think this one is about you. Oh, you don't know Muhammad Hijab?
No.
Oh, he doesn't know anything about what's going on. Yeah, guys, he's a reader. He's not been following. He doesn't follow the YouTube drama and so on. But yeah, he's a popular dawah guy who has been in a scandal recently and so on. But Mark here says, hope you go on trigonometry soon. I think people are ready to hear that the Crusades were not Christendom aggression and that they were justified. Mark, if you want to see Raymond on trigonometry, go to trigonometry and start recommending, saying, hey, you got to get Raymond Ibrahim on there to discuss his stuff.
No, thanks for that. But, this is one of the ones that is in my head because I've gotten 1,000,001 comments about trigonometry. And apparently some guy, I don't even know the show, so that's probably going to be
good show, smart guy. Good show, smart guys.
Okay, good. And apparently they had a crusade specialist and everything he said was wrong. And if you go on the show, all the comments are about having me on. All right. And you can see them, trigonometry, saying, we will. And then since then, everyone's contacted me. Have they contacted you? So the answer is no. I haven't heard a word from them. All right. And I'm not waiting to hear. And I don't know anything about it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. My point is, this is pretty common. People want to hear what they want to hear. And based on the guy that they did have on, who was kind of like the exact opposite, in other words, a liar, I don't even know they want to hear what I have to say. But anyway, I'm only saying that because that one rings a bell. And I want to answer people who have been contacting me about trigonometry.
Yep. Yeah, so as far as trigonometry, those guys are they're smart, they're funny, they're super cool, they're doing some awesome work, but they will interview people. They will interview people on topics they don't know a lot about, so they can always get people who aren't reliable, and when that happens, you'll get people requesting, "Hey, why don't you get so and so on here to correct that stuff?" So that's what's going on. So yeah, Mark, that's what happened. Yeah, Mark, that would be on you guys to go and get trigonometry to get Raymond on. Oh, by the way, Raymond, you agreed to be on for 2 hours, so I'm going to be going through Super Chat, so if you need to cut out...
it's up to you, man. I did say 2 hours. If you want me to hang out, I plugged it in, I can. Yep. Or if you want to do your own thing, I'm good with that too.
No, it's basically, I'm going to keep going through Super Chat. Some of these are directed towards you, so...
Okay, all right.
If you're free to hang out, then...
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. This gives a whole new meaning to peace be upon him.
No pun intended.
Very rude, very rude. I bear witness that there are no Juts, but Juts of India, and Muhammad was ridden until sunrise. That is true. That's the new...
here's the thing, and let's academics and scholars... when they discuss something like this, they're going to immediately discount the genie interpretation, right? They're going to be, this is the secular scientific way. You're going to be, obviously, it's not genies, right? Okay, we're not even going to go there. So then what are we talking about? We already know the Zut are real people. They have descriptions, large genitalia, virility, dark skin, muscular, lean. I mean, Muslims must understand how bad this looks.
It looks bad.
Yeah. That's what science says. That's what history says. There's a people known as the Zut or Jut or whatever from Pakistan, modern day Pakistan, Indians, Hindus, basically, who were athletic, tall, muscular, large phalluses, dark, whatever. And they were known because if you forget about this hadith, if I can pull up various sources where they mention al-Zut, and they, Arabic sources kind of have a racist tinge to them, and they have tropes and stereotypes. And so El Zot, because they're dark skinned, or like I said earlier, they're like El Zinj. Zinj, people don't know this. Zenj means the N word. All right, it doesn't mean black. It means the N word. All right, El Zenj, and so amongst Arabs, it's very racist. It's by our standards, the sorts of things that would trigger you if you read and understand what's being relayed in Arabic. It's very, very racist. All right. So they lump dark skinned people all with having large phalluses and being sexually hyperactive. Like I said earlier, 1001 Nights, Arabian Nights, that's every story starts off with some eunuch Arab slave who somehow still, has an erection and all the women run away with him or whatever. Okay. So like it's a big thing in the Arab sort of literary thing. So that those are the people they picked that Muhammad met at night just makes it so much worse, right? When you think about it.
Yeah, it does. Like of all the people, you could say, whoever it was, that they're like these guys, and the reputation that those guys had. It's like, if you're making something up, why would you make up those guys? It is kind of weird.
Exactly.
Sega Boy here says, D Wood, or do you or Raymond think Muhammad actually suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy? He has all the symptoms. I know Brother Rashid has done a lot on this. I've heard it, and and you do see all sorts of stuff in the Muslim sources about Muhammad. He kind of flops down on the ground when he starts receiving revelations and so on. So these do sound like that. I don't know enough about the symptoms to know, but what you have any thoughts on that?
I'm like you. They ring a bell from what I understand about epilepsy, and it could be. But there's something more diabolical about it, because if it was just epilepsy, then he would be an innocent receptacle who's passive to what's happening. But I think he knew what was going on, and he sort of, basically marshaled it. Which is above and beyond being an epileptic innocent victim.
Yeah. Just so you know, I was at work randomly singing all night long, pretending I'm Muhammad, singing Missy Elliott. Is it worth it? Let me work it. This is what my brain is now. Yeah, you got to take a break from the Islam's most trusted sources. That's apostate of Allah. She's an ex-Muslim, but yeah, you gotta take a break from the Muslim sources. Otherwise, they fill your head with this stuff. Hi all. Whoa! Did AP hit the gym? Blessings. Yeah, what's funny is AP was hitting the gym for a while, and he started swelling up and getting muscles, and then he just gave up. So, yeah, guys, let this be a lesson to you. Stick with the gym. Stick with it.
I'm AP too.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. They call you Buff AP. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's metaphorical, brother. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. That's how you say it. All right.
Yeah. Let's see. We could use a series by Raymond of the religious and anti-Islamic expansion aspects of European exploration. I know the Portuguese Jesuits in Japan.
Hey, let's talk about that real quick, because it's timely, David. It has to do with Columbus Day, which Donald Trump just, like a few days ago, told us how he's bringing it back with a vengeance.
We're going to save Columbus Day. We're going to help the Italians.
You want to save it? I'm down with saving it.
Oh, no.
Give it a little.
No. I'm saying him.
Save.
Yeah, he's going to save
it.
Yeah,
save. Salvific save. All right. as opposed to save it for later. So yeah, I have the date. Maybe it was less than a week ago, where Donald Trump announced that we're bringing back Christopher Columbus. We're going to make him great again, and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I think that's great, because the woke left took him down, and they turned him into a genocidal, crazy Italian madman who wants to kill, peaceful Pocahontas people. And so I made a little video about it, just that came out today, which is that basically I love what Donald Trump is doing to save Christopher Columbus from, and I'm not going to get into how he's been downgraded. I assume everyone knows, right? Including Kamala Harris attacked him, and he's an evil person. But what I would like to see is actually not only saving Christopher Columbus Day, but actually us knowing what it was all about. Because as someone like everyone else here, born and raised here, when I went to school, public schools, Christopher Columbus and all the Italian, Spanish, Portuguese explorers, they sailed in the 15th century and 16th century and even earlier because they were looking for spices and a route to India and to prove the world is round. No, if you actually read the real sources, it was all about Islam. It was because of the massive war going on with Islam. And what was happening during Columbus's day was even amongst the worst. Constantinople was conquered with one of the most horrific atrocities that ever happened to Christians by Muslims. We can get into that. And a few years later in Italy, his home country, Toronto, the Muslims landed and butchered thousands of Christians because they would not recant Islam, and they sawed the archbishop in half. Until this day, you can go to the Cathedral of Otranto, and they have huge glass windows with the relics or the skulls of all the martyrs who died rather than recant Christianity for Islam. And there was a war going on in Spain, which is why Ferdinand and Isabella favored Columbus. So my point is, the whole thing was about fighting Islam. You could not go east, but they wanted to go east, one, not just for economical purpose, which was always there. Economic is life, but also to try to find Prester John. Prester John was a legend, a powerful Christian king who lived in the east, and what the Christians meet him and try to summon his forces so they can have a pincer movement against the Muslim world in between them, between Europe and Asia, and be done with Islam. So actually, if you look into sources and you read about it, and this is amazing. It's amazing. It was amazing to me when I first read about it 20 years ago, but it's still unknown, which is basically that, all these guys that went sailing, it was all about fighting Islam, circumnavigating Islam, which was dominating the Eastern Mediterranean and killing any Christian who went there, and trying to also solicit aid from legendary Christian sources that could help them. That's what it was all about.
Interesting stuff. I didn't even know that.
Oh man.
You're okay. We hear you. Oops. Can someone create an artistic rendition of that hadith and make it viral? That would be good for anyone who wants to do that. Here we go.
Did you lose me?
No, you were still there.
So did I finish my tale?
Yeah. No, we got. Yeah, you finished it.
All right, because everything was frozen on my end, but okay. Good.
Yeah, we still heard you. Doesn't this hadith continue on talking about angels that feel bad for the prophet and make a proverb about him very similar to Matthew 22, 1-14? Matthew 22, 1-14 is the parable of the wedding feast. I'd have to take a look at that to see if there's any parallel. Please go and subscribe to Raymond Ibrahim's channel. His videos are short yet informative, with the references also provided so you can write them down, study, and share them later. Without lies, Islam dies. Yeah, I have links to Raymond's video on this topic and to his channel and to the source that Giant DOC shared for anyone who wants to go around sharing that. So share the video. Matter of fact, guys, here's how you do it. Share Raymond's video. And then when people object, no, there's no source on this, then share the link that Giant DOC shared. Then you've got it. The video thumbnail is Wild D. Wood. You are a genius. Yes, I know this. Could Muhammad have sensed danger, told his companion to stay back like a protective mother, and complied with strangers to avoid being killed?
I've actually seen this. I've seen a lot of people arguing this is Muhammad being altruistic. He knew the sacrifice he had to make with al-Zut, and he told his friend, hey, hang out here so you can be safe. Very pure altruism. So, hey, have at it.
Yeah. Only issue, guys. So, you can interpret things that way, that Muhammad's basically saying, take me, but leave him alone. But it really looks like this was all planned and coordinated, because he knows what's about to happen when he's drawing this line and so on. He's like, hey, just make sure you stay behind this line. This is the consent line. This is the consent line. They'll know that you have to consent.
But see, no, here's an important point. A lot of people, I agree with you, but a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. But why did the line work? Because according to Hadith, the line worked. Because Abdullah bin Mas'ud saw them, they came, they tried to access him. He got freaked out and sat down. And then according to Hadith, they didn't reach him. So apparently the line worked. So there's another school of thought that there's some sort of satanic, magical element involved here, that Muhammad was, it would, I suppose it would comport with the genie idea. In other words, there's these genies and they're having some sort of, relations, but Muhammad is also, through magic, protecting his friend for whatever reason. Maybe it's not even a good reason. I don't know. I'm just telling you a lot of the things that I've been seeing that, if anything, make it worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it makes sense that this is something, some sort of magical line, but also that it's a consent line. Like, it's understood. Hey guys, if I bring someone to watch and he's behind this line, there's no access to him.
This is bad.
But Ibn Masud, he doesn't know. He just sees the guys coming at him, and they're like, "Is he going to invite us past the line?" He's like, "I'm sitting down. I don't know what these guys are going to do." So
isn't it? No, I've never seen anyone notice that. I'm the first. I'll take credit. I'm the first one to notice that his reaction is to sit down. Because I've watched a lot of polemics, people who are attacking this, and they go past it. Oh, he got scared and he sat down. But to me, it's kind of interesting. His first instinct on being scared by these naked black men who are circumnavigating around him is to sit down. It wasn't to run away. It wasn't to fight back. It was to sit down. Doesn't that imply he's trying to cover what he thinks they want?
It does look like, if you saw a bunch of guys coming at you worried about like they're going to fight, you wouldn't want to sit down. You'd want to stand up and put your guns up. But yeah, if you're like, I'm going to sit down on my backside.
That's what the Arabic says. He got scared and sat down.
Not to offend you, Ray, but do you have any Lebanese in you at all? Not the in like the zut in mo. I just mean genetically. You are a spitting image of a cousin of mine. Either way, God bless you, bro.
Thank you. I don't know. I probably should do a DNA test at some point, but I've had a lot of people tell me I look Lebanese, Syrian, etc. So, yeah.
Easy choice to follow, the risen one versus the ridden one. And we're proud of that. That is true. I'm going to steal that too. Thank you so much, Raymond. Real gold. Oh, hi, David. That's the other thing on the internet now. They'll say something nice about someone, and then they'll say, oh, hi, other person.
Oh, by the way.
What is this? Grok says Hadith uses the word meaning to crowd.
Wait, I see it. What? As dahamu. Okay, so that means to crowd, but that's not the word I see. No, that is the word that means to crowd. And okay, so apparently I've dug into this, and later on, a much later hadith came out recounting the same story, and it uses that word. Okay, not the original hadith. The original hadith says ride, but a new hadith came out, and they do use izdahamun, which means to crowd. Okay, it sounds like I said, it sounds like damage control.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to help Grok, because again, guys, when these AI things are doing searches, they're also searching Muslim responses and stuff like that. They can't tell the difference between someone who's, biased in favor of Muhammad and so on. So you can actually probably help out these AIs by saying, okay, what about this hadith on this site right here? What does this say? And get them to try and take that into account. Best of deceivers, yet there are many other interpretations of that term. I've been told I've misunderstood that so many times. Well, yeah, makar would mean deception, but if you want to translate it as best of schemers or planners or plotters and so on, especially in the context.
The best way to put makar for a Western audience, especially those who are familiar with mythology, is a makar is Loki, a Loki figure. Yeah. That's Allah. He's Loki, basically. Think of all the trickster games that he plays, right?
He does say, I've made that comparison many times. Said he sounds more like Loki than he sounds like the god of the Bible. And so, so Richard, if you want to translate this as scheming, plotting, planning, and so on, yeah, you can. Just keep in mind, it's the sort of scheming and plotting and planning of like a trickster or a deceiver. And so, let's see. A caller disconnected when CP showed him this hadith. That's not surprising. So it's talking about Christian Prince. So people back out when people bring this up. Hi, hell of a night from Mo. Interested in Raymond's take on the UK and advance of caliphate generally. Have we Been lied to about crusades. Off topic. Sorry. Well, you already touched on that a little bit, but
Yeah, you've been lied about the Crusades. You've been lied about everything. You've been lied about history. All of history has been completely. A lot of people talk about fake news, which I'm glad they do because it's important. But like I always point out, fake news, as dangerous as it is, it's ephemeral. Much more dangerous is fake history. It's much more dangerous is the fake history they teach in, kindergarten, grade school, high school, college, because that creates paradigms. And then through those paradigms, you see the whole world, right? And yeah, the Crusades is just one of many examples of the sort of fake history that has been foisted upon Western peoples, particularly intentionally to destroy them, to be honest with you, to weaken them and emasculate them. Yeah, so I mean, that's a whole other show, but yeah, yes is my short answer.
Videos about that would be good because that would be timely because that's still that's going on for a lot of people right now. Yeah. Now we got some comments about the whole Diha thing. There is no prophet but Diha, and Muhammad was his messenger. That's how my product Diha lotion started giving you soft, white, glowing skin. Good times with Muhammad. Diha be upon him. Hi, guys. People are weird. Can't we just conclude that there never was a Jibreel? It was always Diha, and Mo was mentally ill. You definitely have a case for that. I think that someone from Muhammad's tribe probably did harm to someone from the people of Al-Zut's tribe, and Muhammad had to do that to settle a score. Oh yeah, one of these agreements. It's like, hey, a bunch of you guys gangbanged this guy over here. Now we need retaliation. Muhammad's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
I'll take the sacrifice.
Weird stuff. A guy commented that other religions' followers do wrong also. Yes, but it is not sanctioned under Christianity. It is called out and opposed. Yeah, people keep bringing up, but what about the scandal in the Catholic Church? Is that, guys, you're talking about the founder, the pattern of conduct in Islam. This is in a completely different category. We're not saying something some random guy did at some point. Dawah, like Muhammad, isn't recovering from this. Dawah, like Muhammad, isn't recovering from this. Yeah, Dawah is hurting like Muhammad from this. AP, Rid, and D-Wood are great. Love, God bless. Thank you. Let's see. It wasn't gay when the 6 Zut rode Muhammad all night long until he couldn't walk the next day due to pain because those 6 Zut made Muhammad wear a wig. Talk about being busted, lol.
And so, by the way, before I forget, as you know, there's all these hadiths of Muhammad dressing as a woman, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dressing up. That's another example of what I was saying earlier, that I'm sick of giving the benefit of the doubt. You've got all these hadiths which say that Muhammad was in the garments of his wives and so on. And Muslims will say, oh, here it means blanket, or here it means house. They'll just make things up. And it's like, and you say, well, I mean, maybe, I don't know, or maybe it's a euphemism for this or that. And you say, maybe, but what's it actually say? It says he was in the garments of his wives. And,
or worse, why is there too many? One too many of these anecdotes going around.
Yeah, all over the place. All over the place.
The pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, no more giving the benefit of the doubt. Muhammad was prancing around in his child bride's nightie, and it was all to get the attention of the men of Zut, so they can ride him all night long. That's what we're going with. And there's
to exonerate his tribe from the blood due, whatever.
Yeah, and all you Dawah guys who are mad that we're sharing this information, hey, how about not being a bunch of horrible liars and so on? Let's see. He had the strength of 40 men. Which direction? Here we go. Let's see. Got a couple more. Are atheists under the same unalive penalty as polytheists, as only the people of the book are able to be spared and pay jizya? Yeah, actual atheists weren't really a thing back in that day. It was monotheists and polytheists and so on. But yeah, they would not be under the people of the book category. As far as you agree on that, Raymond?
Yeah, I mean, first, the atheist is a total anachronism. Nothing like that existed. But according to classical jurisprudence, people of the book were, Jews and Christians, maybe Zoroastrians. Then they butchered the Hindus, so they killed 1 million of them. And then they decided to make money off of them rather than kill them. Then they became people of the book too. So,
And Mosh Cohen here, who's Israeli. He says, I became obsessed with Raymond ever since the last time you guys had him on discussing Is Islam at War with the West? That video is also one of my QRs. Raymond, let me tell you, Mosh here is funny. He's in the military over there, but he shares QR codes that link to our videos and so on. He actually tries to give the Arab Muslims information about Christianity because he says he wants them to convert out of Islam, but he understands it's way more likely that they'll convert to Christianity than that they would convert to Judaism and so on. So he shares stuff.
It is. Yeah, okay, cool. I appreciate that. That's good.
Yep.
That's good work.
Good stuff.
That's a topic we should talk about, which is, the best strategy for those who would convert Muslims out of Islam. Is it to tell them this, that, or the other thing, including is Muhammad a pervert or is Muhammad a non-existent entity, for example?
Yeah, that is. And there was actually a poll. So two things. One, there was actually a poll on that. Muhammad Hijab, the guy we mentioned a minute ago, the Dawa guy, he did a poll several years ago, and he asked his Muslim fans, he said, this is for those of you who sometimes doubt your religion. When you doubt your religion, when you doubt whether it's true or not, what is the cause of your doubts? And he gave them a bunch of options. The number one answer, I think it was like 50%, was moral problems with Muhammad.
Yeah,
that was the number one. That was the number one. That was the number one thing.
Yes, I agree, and that's why this is the number one reason I have a problem with the whole like Muhammad didn't exist thing, because it's kind of like you're stepping out of the debate and you're leaving the meaty area where you can actually make an impact.
Yeah,
which is that,
Yeah, and so I'm all in favor of like Robert Spencer and Jay Smith pushing that and seeing, basically telling Muslims, hey, why don't you defend your prophet and show us that he at least existed? This is how unreliable we think your sources are. With that said, I've heard from a ton of ex-Muslims. I don't recall hearing from an ex-Muslim who was persuaded by that and left Islam because he thought, oh, no, I can think of one. Mohammed Sven Kalish, to be fair, a German guy who was a German scholar of Islamic studies, who was a convert to Islam, and he was eventually challenged. He was said, hey, all these principles that you apply when you're examining the Christian sources, these skeptical methods that you apply when you're examining the Christian sources, why don't you apply those to Islam and see what happens? And he did. And he left Islam and said, I don't even think Muhammad ever existed. So that's what happened.
David. You're talking about a German guy. That's not a Muslim.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a Muslim, real Muslim, not a German convert.
Yeah. So as far as using this in polemics that Muhammad didn't exist, it's kind of new. So we haven't.
Let's save that for a nice long thing.
Yeah, we can. But I just mean on the issue of using it for polemics. We haven't seen sort of the long-term effect of it. So that's why I'm in favor of, certain people continuing to see what the long-term impact is. But until I see some of the fruits of this approach, I'm not going to think, one, I don't agree with it. I believe Muhammad existed, so I don't believe in the conclusion. But as far as its usefulness, that would have to be demonstrated. I'd have to see that. I
have to tell you, and that's what we can talk about, is I've done a deep dive in the psych. People think it's all like clear cuts. It's history, it's archaeology. It's not. 90% of it is psychology and emotions. Mm-hmm. This is what people believe. It's not about that. And so we can get into that. I wish it was that clear cut. I myself am on record saying, maybe Muhammad didn't exist. I believe he existed. But the nature of the argument is based on the subject. Are you a non-Muslim who hates Muhammad? You're going to love this argument and you're going to gravitate towards it. Are you a Muslim who wants to follow Islam, et cetera, then this argument is going to be garbage to you. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that, but it's interesting when it's not clear cut. It's not just what the facts are, because there are no facts. That's the problem with history. History is all conjectural. Anyway.
Yeah, and as far as best methods for converting Muslims, even Ayaan Hirsi Ali, now she's a Christian now, but even when she was an atheist, she was telling her fellow atheists, you will have more success converting Muslims if you're helping the Christians convert them than getting them to become atheists. Because you did have lots of Muslims who became atheists. She's just pointing out for lots of Muslims in the Muslim world, it will be easier to show them that Muhammad's a false prophet and that they can still believe in God and become Christians than becoming atheists and so on. So interesting there.
The bottom line is you got to fight fire with fire. All right. If you want to confront a religious polemic or an argument, you have to do it from a sort of a religious paradigm. You can't just come from an atheistic, oh, he didn't exist sort of thing. I mean, we can get into that, but I'm just saying, you got to fight fire with fire. And I've been watching this. I've been following this for almost 20 years, especially in Arabic satellite stations. And this is the most powerful thing is when people, here's the thing. When I say, look, I agree with what you tell me. Okay, Muhammad said this. The hadith says it. Muhammad said that in the Quran, whatever, right? If I do that, I'm playing their game. And then I point out, look, but he also got mounted. Help me out here, right? But if I'm doing the he didn't exist, this whole mounting thing doesn't even count. We can't even talk about this because he didn't exist, right? So you see, it's much different. Anyway.
Dawood and Raymond, I did not know what type of hole I was getting into today with this stream. Thank you.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun here. As Boricua from Puerto Rico, Christopher Columbus is a murderer. Know your facts. He tried to kill all Tainoan Indians. I don't know anything about that.
My point simply is why I'm not even talking about what he did. I'm just talking about why did he go west in the first place. Mm-hmm. And the narrative is for spices or it's all these silly things, proving the world is round or finding a new route. And my point is simply no. It was actually, this was part of the long war with Islam that had been going on for centuries. All right. Now, what he and other Spanish or Portuguese or European colonizers or discoverers did. All right, that's something else. But my point is the actual motivation, which I wish would come out, but it doesn't come out because they keep that suppressed.
Did you hear of the Ethan versus Hassan debate? No, not really. What does that line that says that Muhammad began to recite to them after they ride him? What does that line that says that Muhammad began to recite to them after they ride him? Yeah, so that would either be something that's added that Muhammad is, like if it's jinn or something like that, then he's trying to show them or...
No. What it says in one of the Arabic narrations is that, so some of them says, I saw the people who looked like El Zut, naked, tall, whatever, lean, and they went and started to ride Muhammad. And then some say the same thing, but then they say, and while they were riding him, he started reciting the Quran to them. Which, I mean, on the one hand, may look like a pious sort of effort. On the other hand, may look like total mockery of his own religion. Like he's mocking the whole thing because he's engaged in that and he's sitting there reciting the Quran. So I don't know. I'm just saying it's something that is in certain narrations and and texts. But I don't know if it's just like when they say it's the jinn. I don't know if that makes it better. It makes it possibly worse.
Yep. The Momo Freak Off Party in the Desert featuring Al Zut. Yep. You could call it that. Dean Response is live now doing live reaction to you. Oh, awesome. Good. Thank you, Dean Response, for helping us popularize this story. Keep at it, bud. Keep at it.
Who's Dean Response?
It's a small Muslim channel. He's got a little
Dean.
channel.
Dean, yeah. Like the religion. Okay.
Yeah. He keeps responding to our stuff and helping us spread it around. So keep up the good work.
I thought it was a Californian surfer, Dean.
Yeah. Yeah, Dean, and go back to hope you're covering early in the video where we're actually talking about the sources and so on. Christopher Columbus, De Soto, and people like them, they killed for gold, had nothing to do with Muhammad in a crusade. Not sure what you were listening to, Roberto. The point was, why did they head west when they were trying to get east? Because you had a problem with Islam. And if you went east, they were gonna get you and take you hostage and take your stuff and so on. So they needed a different way. So that's how they ended up over here. I think that's the point, right?
Do you know that during this era of Columbus and before and after it, if you were a European Christian and you wanted somehow to venture into the eastern lands, go through Ottoman territory, or the Mamluk territories in Egypt and Syria, you needed an actual license from the caliph saying, do not molest, kill, or enslave this person. All right? Because if you didn't have that, that's exactly what would happen to you. So are people surprised that they were trying to find a new route?
People of Al Zut were trying to find a new route. Do you... Justin
That's
says,
a cheap shot, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you know any Christian evangelism resources for Muslims who speak and read Spanish? No, because not my area, but I'm sure you can find that stuff, Justin. So, yeah, look around for that. And if anyone in the chat knows any resources, let Justin know. Would Raymond do a class for Hillsdale or Peterson? I'm guessing you would.
I know Hillsdale's a college. I don't know what Peterson that is.
It's probably Jordan Peterson for his stuff. But you seem pretty open if people want you to do something, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So after Ramadan, do we say he has ridden? Yeah. You don't say he has risen like we do after Easter. You say he was ridden. And Shane here says, got two more. It says, they stop listening when you bring up Muhammad. Who stops listening? They stop listening when you bring up Muhammad. I'm a Christian in Canada ministering to 20 to 30 Muslims weekly. Not my experience, Shane. When you start talking about Muhammad, they can't stay away. And D. Wood, you were the world's biggest Islamophobe until you lost to Robert Spencer. Then he became the biggest Islamophobe. I think Raymond Ibrahim might have taken the title from Robert Spencer. So you are the world's biggest Islamophobe now. All right. All right, Raymond, we got through all the super chats and so on. And it sounds like we've got a couple more topics to cover in the future as far as different approaches and did Muhammad exist and so on. Any final thoughts to share before we close out on this topic?
No, I think the main takeaways from what we discussed today is that this hadith was and is considered sahih, authentic, and that when they tell you it's not, that's they're taking some liberties. Two, they're apologetic, which is it's not people, it's jinn. Does not help matters because jinn have sex and jinn possess, and the word for copulating and the word for possess is the word in the hadith. They rode him. So I think. Muslims, so their best response is, it's a fake hadith, ignore it. But like I said, most of them don't even do that because they try to salvage it because it is a strong hadith. Anyway, so that my final thoughts are that when it comes to that. But, the interesting thing is I brought all this up. If you look at the video I made, I've known about this hadith and I've known a lot of negative hadiths. And it's not my intention to poke fun at Muhammad or Muslims. But I really brought it up because of what we'll talk about eventually, which is to show that the hadith should not really be dismissed as just fabrications. In many ways, indirectly, they actually, like you were saying, about the chains and all that. In many ways, they actually shed light on the reality of who Muhammad was. So I think that's another really important avenue of discussion down the road. Mm-hmm. No pun intended. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so Dean responds, and everyone else who's watching right now, I don't know how Dean responds is responding to this. If he's saying, no, that's not what it meant. It meant the jinn, and they were just crowding around him. If he's going that direction, or if he's going in the direction of this is a weak hadith. What are you doing quoting a weak hadith? Dean responds, just tying all of this together. You're in trouble either way because you either grant these sources or you think that Muslims had some sort of reliable historical methodology and that they were preserving information accurately, in which case, why do you have this source here? And why do you have this story about Muhammad being ridden by the dark, well-endowed men of Al-Zut out in the desert all night long till he comes back and in pain and collapsing on his buddy's lap and so on? Well, you got these and Dih al-Kalbi and all these really creepy stories about Muhammad. Or you can go the skeptical route. No, this was just made up. And problem is, the more stories you have to put in the, oh, no, we just made those up. And that's how they ended up in all our books. The more times you have to do that, the more you're actually helping the skeptics about your sources. The more you're helping the Robert Spencers and the Jay Smiths cast doubt on your sources, because you're basically saying, oh, no, our sources are just filled with lies that people made up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. So they say ended up in like Musnad Ahmed and so on, all these unreliable sources. So these guys just didn't know how to do history, did they? So, okay, great. Keep going with that. And then don't tell us anything about your prophet, because we're going to have to conclude that your method of preserving information about him was complete garbage. If we can't trust the most embarrassing stuff, we're not going to trust the good stuff, because the good stuff is way more likely to be fabricated than the embarrassing stuff. So if we can't even trust the embarrassing stuff, don't tell us about the good stuff. We're not interested. All right. And there's one more that popped up for you. Question for Raymond. Heard about Norwegian Crusade?
Yeah, there was a so-called Norwegian Crusade. I think it was in the Second Crusade, but it really never manifested. And there's Hakon the Good, there's Norwegians who did participate in the Crusades, and some of them actually formed the nucleus of the Varangian Guard for the Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire, because they were such intense warriors, these Nordic fellows, that the Eastern Roman emperors actually surrounded themselves with them. But yeah, I mean, it's still overall the Crusades were a Frankish venture, which is to say French and continental European. But yeah, definitely Norwegians did participate.
And last one there, Dean. They were so I don't know if this is what you think Dean is going to say. Dean response. I don't know if this is what you think he's going to say, or if you're actually over there on his channel and this is what he's saying. But Rob Reed said Dean says they were jinns surrounding him. If that's his response, that's kind of funny, because we pointed out doesn't help, because jinn could have sex, and the possible meanings if this referred to jinn would be that they were having sex with him or that they were possessing him, as far as what the word would mean. And so, hey, Dean responds, if you want to go with jinn having sex with him or jinn possessing your prophet, we're fine with either one of those. And Three Lucky Dogs said, David Wood and Raymond crushed Islam tonight. Not, of course, the way the men of Al-Zut crushed Muhammad. But thank you. And again, everyone, be sure to check out Raymond's channel. He's got lots of videos out there, especially on historical topics, and the link to his video that you should share. Definitely want to share this video everywhere. And again, you've got the link to Jai and DOC who shared the source. So share the video. And then when they say, nope, this is all made up, share the source. It's got it right there on the screen. And popularize this. Spread it all over the place. And we'll see what happens, but it's not going to work out well for Islam. All right, everyone. Thanks to Jai and DOC and Raymond for joining us. And thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll catch you next time.